This letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It is 6:02:57 is what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you the time in different ways today. I don't know why I'm going to do that. It just feels like it. Get up, get out of. That's what we say. It's Morning Glory. It's Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. It is, of course, an extraordinary time to be alive. There's all sorts of things going on. It's the 12th of March. We're already into the second week of March, ladies and gentlemen. There's turmoil in the world markets. Donald Trump has put a lot of tariffs on a lot of things, including aluminum, as they would call it in America, and steel. Also, of course, there are people in this country and in Europe worried that he's going to put even more tariffs on. The tech bros, as we're being told to call them, which is basically the heads of state, like Elon Musk, like Mark Zuckerberg, like Jeff Bezos, the billionaires that run Facebook, that run Meta, that run Elon Musk's Tesla company, SpaceX, all of that. Jeff Bezos, Amazon, of course, they've apparently lost 162 billion quid in the last couple of days. So I'm sure that their support for the President of the United States of America might be under a little bit of pressure. Of course, all these people always end up making money, so the money will come back. We've got record boat crossings hitting 5,000 already. One big question for you, though, is never mind the peace deal in Ukraine, never mind whether Vladimir Putin is going to sign up to it. What I'm interested in is who's paying for Manchester United's new football stadium, because we're being told that it might be us, the taxpayer. Well, I don't want to pay for Man United's new football stadium. Theo is here with us this morning. Theo Usherwood, he's going to be telling us what he thinks of all of these stories, as well as telling us, as a minor Manchester United fan, I think, whether he wants to put his begging bowl out and ask us, if we'd like to build a couple of bars and restaurants inside the place as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number. If you've forgotten how to get in touch, here's how you do it.
Hi Mike, great show. Always enjoy listening to it first thing in the morning, sets me up.
Morning Mike, Jackie from Manchester here.
Hi Mike, Richard from Telford.
Hi Mike, Darren from Suffolk, great show.
Hi Mike.
Lee from Rugby, great show as ever.
Morning Mike, Andrew in Portsmouth. I'm loving your greatest hits this morning.
We'll bring you the latest on the reform situation. Nigel Farage did a show last night on the channel that we don't tend to mention that much here, but he did his show, didn't mention anything about Rupert Lowe, didn't mention anything about the current state of affairs, the state of play. The police, meanwhile, are supposedly investigating whatever it was that Rupert Lowe said to Zia Youssef, the chairman of the party. And a very weird story on the front page of The Sun. We knew about this story, but we didn't know the detail of it. A senior assistant to Wes Streeting exposed himself to a 13-year-old girl and then followed her down the street. Whatever is going on inside the Labour Party, I know that, it's not Wes Streeting's fault, but, do they have any judgment at all about the people they hire? 0344 499 1000. Oh, yeah, either way, they've built a railway station somewhere near Cambridge with no car park. Brilliant. Because apparently they want people to cycle there. What's going on? This is Talk. It's Morning Glory. Let's get it on. So welcome to Wednesday. Some people call it Hump Day. I don't like to call it that. It doesn't really mean anything to me. It's 6 minutes past 6. Theo Usherman's here. Theo, very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you.
Another startling week of news, really. I don't know where to begin. I mean, I suppose we should begin with the markets, which just seems to me to be the biggest story. I mean, yes, there is a peace deal on the table in Ukraine because Volodymyr Zelensky agreed it yesterday in Saudi Arabia. We've yet to see what Vladimir Putin has to say about it. So let's talk about the markets because, you know, those of us who are not very well versed in financial matters know that everybody goes into blind panic when the markets go down. But in fact, quite a lot of people make quite a lot of money out of it.
Yes.
And there are even those who are suggesting that Trump is doing it deliberately to short the market and make a load of money, which wouldn't surprise anyone, would it?
Yes, there is this way you can short the market. You can in effect buy and then promise to buy back
when the price goes down.
When the price goes down, and then you make an absolute killing.
Yeah.
So and it's it's what hedge funds do day in day out. So it's perfectly possible to do. I take the view that what goes down must go up and what goes up must go down. And we saw when Trump became president, we saw Bitcoin, which was on the floor only 2 years ago, suddenly surpassed 100,000.
Right. And didn't he make some ridiculous amount of money, billions, on his own meme coin, I think, at the time of his inauguration?
This is Trump, and I know you can see that, and the Mail have got quite a good piece, haven't they, about who's lost what, and Jeff, and ironically, of course, Elon Musk has lost more than any of them.
Right.
But this is a man, he's lost about 115 billion, but he's worth more than half a trillion. So. So it might sound like.
And for them, it's a walk in the park, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's every day. I mean, they've hedged against losses all the time anyway. Yeah. And so the only thing I suppose for some people who might be actually drawing their pension right now, because I happened to be having a peek at mine the other day, and it had lost quite a few quid over the last week or so. Yeah. Unless you're actually physically drawing it right now, it's not going to affect you probably much.
And I'd also say, this is the piece. The peace deal, if this can last, it's only a 30-day peace deal, but actually there is nothing like, and it's the right peace deal, that there is nothing like, a calm, a truce in Europe, that actually that might calm things down a bit as well.
Well, a lot of people have asked me the question that, if there is a ceasefire in Ukraine, if there is finally some kind of peace deal signed, will we somehow find that our electricity prices will go down as they did go up when the war started?
Quite possibly. And I think what's also interesting about this is that this story is that actually Donald Trump has restored intelligence sharing. He's restored to Ukraine.
Yeah, military aid is back.
Military aid is back, and he's now said it's up to Putin to come to the table.
Right.
And there was a strong narrative, particularly from the centre and the left, in the last few weeks, that Donald Trump is a madman. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Oh, yeah. Dan Hodges is on later. I'm looking forward to that because he kept telling me that this was a terrible thing that was happening. I kept telling him, wait and see, and look where we are.
And he's in Putin's pocket, and he's just going to roll over for Russia at every single turn. And but as you say, wait and see. Let's see the detail. But actually, the key things that really could have scuppered, peace in Europe, the key rollover for Vladimir Putin that he wanted, of course, was to completely withdraw American support. Trump said he's not doing that.
No.
He's going to restore intelligence sharing. That's a fantastic, it's not necessarily
a win for Ukraine, isn't
it?
But
it's as far as security guarantees go, the F-16s are going to be back up and working 100% now. The air defences are going to be working. They're going to get the aid that was promised to them, and it is now up to Vladimir Putin to come to the table.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have happened had Donald Trump not picked up the phone
originally.
Well,
let's face it, the day before Zelensky went to the White House and they had that fractious meeting, he was not in the mood for any kind of negotiation at all with Russia, was he? Zelensky said, you can't negotiate with this guy as a tyrant. And then he started lecturing them about what he thought they should be doing, and they shouldn't be using détente, or they shouldn't be using any kind of, what do you call it, diplomacy, I suppose. And now it looks as though Trump has kind of proven that you can get certain places if you withdraw something and then give it back.
Yes, and the important thing to remember is that after Trump won the election, going through Christmas, Putin was in the box seat. I don't say it with any relish, I don't say it with any pleasure, but it's true.
Yes.
His forces were making advancements. He's got however many troops he wants. He doesn't care whether he just feeds 1,500 men into as cannon fodder every single day. He's got North Korea providing him with supplies. China is supporting, from in the background. He doesn't care. He's in the box seat with this conflict, and Trump did the thing that nobody thought was actually possible, and they got him to the table in Saudi Arabia originally, or his Sergei Lavrov, his foreign minister, to the table in Saudi Arabia. If this comes off, it's going to be a slap in the face to his critics. People are going to have to eat a lot
Once again, they'll have to do it. Let's have a look at what Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, had to say about the ceasefire yesterday.
Today we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. I want to personally we both want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Majesty, for hosting us, for making this possible. They've been instrumental in this process, and we're very grateful to them for hosting us here today. And hopefully we'll take this offer now to the Russians. And we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball's now in their court. And but again, the president's objective here is, number one, above everything else, he wants the war to end. And I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
There's nothing like taking a concrete step on this show. Well done, guys. Tremendous work. Also, we've got another amazing clip of Trump, but maybe we'll play that in a little while, where he walks outside the White House, and outside the White House is a whole range of Teslas that Elon Musk has kind of laid on for him. And he said, pick one, which is quite a remarkable piece of footage. But let's talk about it. It's an incredible story on the front page of The Sun. Yeah. And I say, obviously you're not going to blame West Streeting for this, but I mean, it's not a great look for him. Is one of his members of the team, I suppose. We knew this guy was done for this particular ghastly crime, but we didn't know all the details. Sam Gould, 33 years of age, he worked for West Streeting, exposed himself to a 13-year-old girl and had followed her down the street. And The Sun have done a great job of tracking down the young girl's family, who have said how terrified she is to go out. There are no words to express my horror, says West Streeting, at what happened here. And it is an awful story, but he's an aide for the Labour Party, and you do have to worry that, how somebody like that becomes so close to a senior minister in the cabinet.
Yes, I mean, the mum puts it best, of course. The 13-year-old girl cannot be identified, and so she's anonymous. She said, we're meant to be able to trust people in power. It's worrying to know that he has worked with vulnerable people and school-aged children. I'm in Parliament every single day. If you are in Parliament, if you're in that environment, I'm sure you've been in regularly. There's school trips. There are. Yeah, in fact,
I was down there yesterday. There's loads of school trips going.
Loads of school trips. Loads of loads of vulnerable people coming in. There was when I was upstairs. I was upstairs at a particular committee, the Terminal Bill Committee, the Assisted Dying Bill Committee, and there's an exhibition there for. Vulnerable adults in the mental health system. It is no place for somebody who is admitted these serious offences to be able to work. Now he's going to be able to keep his job as a councillor.
I don't see how he can.
Well,
I mean, how on earth does he get to keep his job as a councillor?
It beggars belief. It beggars belief, Mike. But that's. I
mean, surely he's now a sex offender, isn't he?
Well, and that you would hope would preclude him.
You would have thought.
You would in terms of working in Parliament and having access to the health. Working with the health secretary, I think that's gone.
Right.
That's not going to happen. Then it's a question of, can he keep his position? I think it's on. Looking at this, he's on Redbridge Council. The horrified health secretary is understood to have sought to sack him immediately after hearing of his arrest, and again called for him to quit Redbridge Council. Wes Streeting told The Sun, there are no words to express my horror. As you say, you can't blame Wes Streeting for this, but it's not a good look. No, this is the line here. I was right. I had read it right, Mike. Sorry. Red tape means local authorities do not have the power to sack councillors for breaching their code of conduct.
That's extraordinary.
That law just needs to be changed. It just needs somebody.
Because
needs to go
if you're a councillor, you're also going to be, in a position to be with people who might be vulnerable, who might be easily influenced, who might be children, certainly minors, who are doing things in the community which you're supposed to be a fine, upstanding member of. I mean, it's absolutely shocking.
He needs to quit, but they also need to change the rules, because you can't have a system where these are he's elected to represent the local community. It may only just be people worried about dog mess and when their bins are going to be collected, but he can't be in that position.
But still, for an awful lot of people, their first port of call if they've got a problem is a council, local
and you
council.
might invite them around to your house.
Yeah, exactly.
And you might have children in the house.
Yeah,
it's
really not ideal, is it? Andy from Tadley in Hampshire says this. FAO Mike Graham, our morning glory regarding Lindsay Hoyle's expenses. Apparently, they get signed off by the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority. That's IPSA. And guess what? You couldn't make this up. He says the Speaker of the House of Commons, and he's quoting now from the IPSA sort of book of memories. The House of Commons is required to select individuals to serve on the board of IPSA on merit, on the basis of fair and open competition, and with the agreement of the Speaker's Committee for the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority. So there you have it.
So there you have it. So on today's board meeting, Mike, we have a trip to Doha, a trip to Canberra.
Yeah.
£500 extra for a bag, wasn't it?
Yes, it was for an extra bag. The Sun have done a great spread in the centre pages today, 26 and 27, where they've highlighted some of his bills, right? But they've also a great piece by Oliver Harvey, who says because as tradition would dictate, when you get the job, you're dragged, sort of reluctantly into the Speaker's chair because you're not supposed to really want to do it, which of course is a great big laugh because everybody wants to do it. It says, but Oliver Harvey says it seems there is a seat you really would struggle to coax and Lindsay into, and that's one in economy class on an aeroplane going somewhere fancy, because we've got the Cayman Islands, Verona, Qatar, Brazil, all sorts of wonderful hotels in these places. Ottawa, Canberra, Tokyo, grand total £250,000. And he's already admitted that he's going to have to make some kind of correction to the record, hasn't he? Which is pretty bad news if you're the Speaker.
Yes, and this is quite a nice line in Oliver's piece. When it comes to his apartment, I've been into his apartment, by the way. It's fantastic. He says the rooms inside his apartment in of course it's Grace and Favour, make 10 Downing Street look like a motorway travel lodge.
I was told yesterday, actually, by the way, confidentially by a source of mine down there, that he's had quite a lot of, shall we say, renovation done to this apartment, and some of it may not involve marble. Put into bathrooms, right? And also there's a bunch of other apartments in the same building which are also under his kind of aegis, which supposedly have been sort of handed out to people that he rather likes.
Yeah. So you end up.
So he's really pushing the envelope on this one.
So it goes. I just like the idea that it goes before the IPSA committee that your correspondent writes in, and you look at it goes up, and item number any other business. Yeah. The Speaker's £250,000 travel bill, and it will just sort of get how are we going to rule on this one, guys? It's fine.
I know, absolutely right, ridiculous. Coming up, we're going to talk about farm subsidies, because a couple of you are asking about it. Telegraph's got a piece today saying that farming subsidies have been halted by the government in a fresh blow to rural communities. We'll explain what all that means. It's not good news if you're a farmer. Also, we'll talk about the ridiculousness of building a railway station in Cambridge, a new station, so that people can travel in and out of Cambridge, but there's no car park attached to the station, so therefore there's nowhere for anybody to park, and the local residents are up in arms going, well, they're all going to just be parking in the street then, aren't they? Because why? Because they want people to cycle there, for God's sake. This is Morning Glory. We'll be back after this.
obviously I followed on 9 months after Nigel stepped down from the leadership of UKIP, and I took on the leadership of UKIP. So if you like, I was very much in that circle, and at one point I regarded Nigel as a friend. But with time, it was quite clear that that UKIP, subsequently the Brexit Party and Reform, have been a platform, a fundraising and support platform from which one man can project his politics.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 22 minutes past 6. Theo Rushwood's here with us. Here's one from Jansen. No, we said that, didn't we? Learned last night that Starmer has stopped all subsidies to farmers. This is big. Well, we will talk about it. Alan in Merseyside. The truth is Reeves has wrecked the economy while giving massive pay rises to her union friends. Now she's got no money, so she will have to attack Labour's key voters and benefit claimants. Yeah, well, apparently the benefit claimants sort of clampdown is going to be suffering because of the fact that they've now got more national insurance money coming in. So, in fact, it turns out that a lot of firms are not going to be paying that national insurance that they were expecting to pay, because I was learning just this morning, I was just telling you, Theo, that some companies, and one of them in particular that I know, which uses a lot of drivers, is putting everybody on 0 hours contracts on the basis that they don't want to pay the extra national insurance. So if companies start doing that, then the Labour government doesn't get the benefit of the pay rise.
No, it's crazy, because the government, the problem with the government is they don't have that business expertise in the room when they make these decisions.
Yeah.
These Treasury
So some idiot from Labour goes, oh yeah, put their taxes up, they'll just pay it. Well, guess what? Put people's taxes up, they avoid paying it.
Imagine if you had, say, the boss from 3 or 4 big companies that they could be in the room when these decisions are made, and they're saying, okay, you do that, then this is how I'm going to respond. This is what I'm going to have to do. Imagine putting the boss, I don't know, of Addison Lee or the boss of Tesco in the room, and just because what they did when they put that national insurance rise up, nobody expected it. Everybody was just sat back and they were just in shock that they'd gone and done it. So there was no consultation about it. And businesses, they said it at the CBI, and I'm no fan of the CBI, right? But they said at the CBI, you took us all by surprise. Right. And because they took them by surprise, there was no... They're just having to make decisions.
So they couldn't make any fiscal sort of headroom for it.
They're just making decisions to protect their businesses. Yeah. And that means... OK, should we take, we've got somebody working part-time for the last 6 months, should we take them on full-time? No, we'll just let them go. Yeah. Oh, OK, what are we going to do in terms of paying that national insurance price? I know what we'll do. We just won't take on those workers.
Right. We'll put all the people who they're currently paying national insurance for, they're just saying make them 0 hours contracts, then they don't pay any national insurance. So they actually lose money.
Yeah, and lots of firms are doing this, and this is actually something that they've wanted to fight against. Right. Is that you have firms where it's actually the firm is only like, it's the boss, it's the person who runs the IT, somebody does maybe, don't even need somebody for HR, you have a secretary, you have 4 or 5 people, and then everybody else is self-employed. Right, so that's the model.
Because if you've got a small business with under 5 employees, you're exempt from this national insurance rise. So that's what a lot of people will be doing.
They're tiny, these companies, and actually to us, the consumer, Mike, they look like large conglomerates. Yeah. But they're actually in terms of manpower, they're really small firms. Yeah. Because all of the people who work for them, well, they don't work for them, they work for themselves, and then they are simply contracted out on it's the Uber model of
which a lot more people will do, because why should they give more money to the government? They bloody waste it anyway. And let's get a voice note from Karen on this Labour aid.
Hi Mike, I'm not surprised that this aide gets to keep his job as a councillor. I mean, think of the Pakistani rape gangs and all those people in positions of responsibility, even councillors that knew what was going on in their constituencies, and they got to keep their jobs. The fact that he gets to keep his job as a councillor is absolutely worrying, horrifying, and it should never happen that once these people are exposed, they don't get to keep their jobs.
Yeah, it must be right, surely to heavens, that you don't keep somebody on who's been found guilty of exposing himself to a 13-year-old girl. How the hell does he keep his job in any way, shape or form, never mind working for the taxpayer and working as a counsellor? Absolutely shocking. Speaking of a waste of money, let's talk about Manchester United.
Yeah.
Big story this. Front page of the Star, which we don't mention that often. Man United's £2 billion new home is unveiled, but will the taxpayer get a big bill? And they're calling it Gold Trafford, which I quite like. Theatre of Dreams. They're saying it's going to look a bit like the Eiffel Tower. It looks a bit hideous. It looks like a sort of blancmange style to me.
I'm not a fan.
No.
I'm not a fan.
No.
I'd say that was a very loose Man United supporter.
Right.
But being from South West London.
Well, naturally.
Naturally. but look, so I was in the briefing room with the PM Spokesman yesterday. Lots of journalists are in it. Nothing special. And we were asking about, or one of my colleagues was asking about this particular issue, and they were like, well, we welcome the project. We were going to have a look at the detailed plans. Nothing's come forward, but make no mistake. If you're any other football fan of any other club in the country, you'll be like, hang on a moment, am I going to get the taxpayer to pay for my project, my stadium?
It doesn't seem to have any kind of basis in history. Why should we be building football stadiums for any particular rich football clubs?
So, well, it was rich. It's not anymore. It's £1 billion in debt because of the way it's been mismanaged. But so the stadium itself, Man United are going to build the stadium. And that's going to come in at about £1 billion. What they've done is they're going to create a regeneration project.
Yeah, right.
Call it a regeneration project. It's a regeneration.
Right.
So hotels.
They
and
did
shops
this with Manchester. I think they called it East Manchester Stadium before the Manchester City mob moved into the Etihad because it was built for the Commonwealth Games. Yeah. Years ago.
you have and you maybe have a shopping centre and all the paraphernalia. Community centre. Yeah, all of that. It's all going to be there, and then the taxpayer's going to have to foot, and that's going to come in at another £1 billion, by the way. And the taxpayer will foot the bill.
I'm not happy about this.
The hope is, don't shoot the messenger. The hope is it will have economic regeneration.
Yeah, growth. They'll keep saying it, won't they? Just keep saying it.
92,000 jobs, 17,000 homes. Yeah. And as a result of that,
they come out
everything kind of just blossoms.
Did you see that other story from Angela Rayner yesterday where she wants to build more houses out of wood? Now, I used to live in America where they build an awful lot of houses out of wood, and in America you can do that because wood is much cheaper than building it out of brickwork or concrete or anything like that. But also the climate is very different, and if you've got nice dry weather, which they have in America, in most parts of it anyway, your wooden house will not deteriorate at a rate of knots. But if you have one here, where it rains at least half the year, the whole thing will go rotten within about 2 years, I would imagine, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and you have to, if you have wooden anything, you have to paint it or you have to seal it. Like every couple of years, we've got some wooden windows. Yeah, and
they rot.
It's a job. It's a job
rot,
I just avoid. And my wife says, "Get on the ladder and get up there."
But they rot.
Do it.
They rot. I've lived in houses in this country all my life with wooden windows, and they don't make them anymore because it's not practical.
No, it's just
now
PVC.
you make them out of plastic, PVC windows. Yeah, because the old wooden ones used to rot, and then they get drafty, and then you get colds, and then children get sick. It's ridiculous. Bit of breaking news: the European Union have said it will impose retaliatory measures on US goods starting on April 1st after President Trump's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium, I'm going to say it like that, came into force this morning. This is going to go for a while, isn't it, this kind of tit-for-tat tariff business, because Trump seems to be using the tariffs as a kind of carrot and stick approach for things, isn't he? First he's going to put them on Canada, then he's not. Then he's going to put them on Mexico, then he's not. Then he's going to put them on Canada again.
Well, he's pretty much 50%.
It's the sort of hokey-cokey of tariffs.
But whisper it quietly, this is a benefit of Brexit.
Yeah.
Because we're not part of the European Union, and so we're not going to place retaliatory tariffs on the United States. And so there is a chance, and this is what the government is hoping for, Mike, that further down the line we might actually be able to negotiate our way out of the tariffs with Donald Trump if we can strike a deal that Donald Trump, when Keir Starmer visited the White House, said he was so in favour of.
Yes.
So for all of those saying there has never been a benefit to Brexit, this is a benefit of Brexit because we're not part of the European Union. We're not going to be placing retaliatory tariffs on Donald Trump.
So we can mark this one down with all those tedious people on Twitter go, can you name one thing that's been better since Brexit?
This is it. Because if we can go, if Starmer can get a trade deal or get some sort of deal with Donald Trump, that's possibly, and seems to be the strategy, because these tariffs are going to apply to the UK, but we could potentially be exempted from these tariffs. If we're part of the European Union, we wouldn't have a choice. Let's see how the European Union get on with these retaliatory tariffs. I would suggest that it's going to go really badly for them.
Yes, it will.
It's going to go spectacularly badly. Because Donald Trump's not going to take
He doesn't care what the EU does, really, because he feels he's already in a bind with them, because he talks about there being a $350 billion trade deficit with the EU, right?
But we're not part of that club anymore.
Right.
And so there's a real opportunity here, actually, to say, Donald Trump, you know what's going on with the European Union. I'm really sorry about it, but that's not us. Let's negotiate bilaterally together.
Right. Meanwhile, on the front page of the Telegraph, we mentioned this already, farming subsidies have been halted. This is the main replacement subsidy to what the EU used to give farmers, right? Because the EU used to give farmers these ridiculous kind of grants to not grow anything, and to leave fields fallow, which apparently the government have now paused. They say new applications will no longer be accepted into the subsidy scheme, with no warning at all, leaving some farmers with holes in their budgets, apparently, according to Tom Bradshaw, the head of the National Farmers Union. He says it's another betrayal following the government's decision to impose inheritance tax on farmers. They're really going for the farmers, aren't they? It's
not good, and I know many of your listeners will live in towns and cities. They won't necessarily know the farming community, but this story, I think, is really relevant to people, because what it speaks to is our food security first and foremost, what we can grow in this country, how we can feed the nation. Farmers are absolutely integral to this. We've had the inheritance tax changes, which means that actually large farms, or most farms, in fact, those who own them are going to have to sell off large chunks of their land in order just to pass down some of what they have to their children or loved ones. That's the first thing. We've then got this story where the subsidies, and I listened to Steve Reed. He gave a speech to the Environment Secretary, and he was like, I know the inheritance tax, I'm really sorry about the inheritance tax, but we're doing all this other stuff to try and make farming more profitable in this country. And now they've pulled the plug on this. This really matters to your listeners. This is really important stuff. And they've also got some planning changes in the offing that were announced yesterday, where they're going to be looking to try and purchase, the government's going to be allowing local authorities to purchase land to build houses on. The land will then be worth a huge amount more than it was when the farmer sold it to them under a compulsory purchase order, where the farmers would have no choice. And then they're looking at purchasing farmland to turn them into wild meadows, so that they can say, well, when we build this major infrastructure project and we've got to move this community of bats, we can set it or rewild,
which nobody cares about, by the way. No, I've never met one person apart from the loony kind of nutty net zero brigade who give a stuff about rewilding.
So we can build a bat habitat
and some butterflies can potter about. Well, great. I mean, let's look at what they're doing in Cambridge. Daily Mail's got this on page 14. They built a train station basically with no car park. This is their latest attempt to try and get people out of their cars onto bikes, walking and all of that. The reason people drive to the train station is because they live probably quite a long way from the train station, and they want to take the train because it suits them better. It's a cleaner way to travel. You can do more work perhaps when you're on the train. But if you can't park your bleeding car when you get on the train, you're not going to go there, are you?
No. What happens when it snows? What happens when it's a heavy hailstorm? Or what happens when it's freezing cold?
And the people who live around the station, of course, have quite rightly said, drivers will try to park in the nearby streets, which will just cause chaos.
And
it's madness,
but we have these schemes.
Cambridge South Station. This is, if anybody's up in that neck of the woods.
£200 million sustainable transport hub will offer storage for 1,000 bicycles. But most commuters, like 99.99% of them, you live out in the sticks, you maybe get a lower house price as a result, and then you drive to the station in the morning.
You don't mind paying to park there because that's part of the course,
And then you take the train into London to work.
But Mark from Behind the Glass was telling us they're doing it in London as well. Sadiq Khan's doing it in all of the kind of what you might call sort of slightly outside London stations at the end of the line, like Stanmore, Edgware, places like that, where you could normally park a car because people would sometimes drive out of London, if you like, get on the tube. Now they're doing away with all the car parks, so you can't do it anymore.
Well, it's
ridiculous.
But that's not the way people people want to live. They just want to be able to,
People just want to have an easy life. It's hard enough commuting, right? It's hard enough getting into town. It's hard enough getting there on time, knowing that the trains they're going to be erratic at the very least, and you hope that they're going to be running and they're not going to be on strike. But at the end of the day, it's a hope rather than expectation. And if you now can't park your car anywhere without the risk of it getting a ticket or clamped or something like that, more help from the authorities.
It's all of these schemes. They're all that you have houses or flats being built with no parking because they
want to discourage you from driving,
and they're more likely to get planning.
Why don't they just leave us alone?
Developers are more likely to get planning permission.
Yeah.
So where do you park your car? You can't have a car. Silvertown Tunnel is about to open in East London.
Right.
So from Tower Bridge, which we can see from central London,
I'm looking at it right now.
Tower Bridge, you've got Rotherhithe Tunnel. Yeah. You've got the one you can walk under.
Yeah, the Greenwich one.
The Greenwich Tunnel you can walk under.
Yeah.
And then you have the Blackwall Tunnel.
Blackwall Tunnel. But they're building this new Silvertown Tunnel right next to it, right?
So out in East London, there are very few crossings for the river, and you know what it's like to live in East London. Like the roads just get jammed. Yeah. One tunnel closes and everything gets blocked down. The Silvertown Tunnel is going to have a bus lane in both directions.
Unbelievable.
I can't understand.
So one lane for cars, one lane for buses, and they're going to charge what, £6 for the privilege?
Five, 6 quid. It's going to be expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about the plumber who's struggling to get by on 25 grand a year living down in Dartford or in Gravesend, who comes into town.
Who's going to have to pay 10 quid to go through the tunnel both ways.
For an electrician.
And if he has to go into the central, congestion charge area, that's another 15. So that's 25 quid he's got to make before he's even got his kit off.
And
out, rather, sorry.
And the Chancellor talks about economic growth. It's those men and women who get us the economic growth.
Yeah.
They're the ones who get this country moving. And I don't understand. Maybe I don't need to understand. Maybe they've just never done those. They've never done those jobs, or they've never met those people, or they're just not their types, right? But why, at every level of government, they cannot understand the strain those people who listen to this radio station are under, and how hard their lives are, and actually just forget your eco scheme, forget your car park, and just come up with something that works for ordinary,
to make their lives easier.
To coin their phrase. Working
people who they talk about a lot, but they don't really know. That's the problem. 6:37. Theo Rushwood's here. We're coming up. Going to talk about a chainsaw project, which is going to be brought in apparently not to do anything horrible to people, but to basically cut a load of civil service jobs. Also, we're going to be talking about criminals laughing at the law. That's the Daily Mail story on pages 6 and 7, because really, really seriously bad criminals are getting locked up for shorter and shorter times, and Labour doesn't want to lock them up at all. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's 20 minutes to 7. It is, of course, Wednesday, the 12th of March. If you're not up and at 'em yet, there's plenty of time left. We're here all the way through until 10 o'clock. And, of course, if you haven't asked for one of these already, you need to. It's the Home and Common Sense bumper sticker. Everybody wants them. Everybody is putting them on the back of their car, on the back of their van. Some people even put them on the back of pushchairs. As long as it's a moving thing, you can put it on the back of it. I've been told by the bosses here to say, if you're going to stick it on your fridge, you're not getting one, right? So don't ask for one if you're going to just put it somewhere where nobody can see it. Because the whole idea is it's what we call a sort of a guerrilla marketing campaign so that people understand what these are. There's only one way to get one of these stickers, right? You head over to talk.tv/sticker and you can join the Common Sense Revolution. That's where you ask for it. You don't send it anywhere else. Don't send it to any email addresses that we may have given you before for the last lot, because supplies are limited. We've got more being printed as we speak. They're literally, you know, the Oompa Loompas are working round the clock down at the old bumper sticker factory in order to get so many stuff out to you. And a load of stuff, I think another 1,000 I think went out yesterday. So if you ordered one, do keep a lookout for it, and we'll try and get you them as quickly as we can. But do please understand that there's a finite amount of people working on this, so we're doing the best we can. Theo Rushwood's here. Let's talk a little bit about a couple of stories in the papers this morning. Project Chainsaw, which sounds a little bit aggressive to me, but this is on front page of The Guardian, believe it or not, which is not a place I normally go to. But basically they're saying that they want to call it that because it brings back memories of Elon Musk's famous chainsaw moment, and they've got a plan to cut thousands of civil service jobs, restructuring NHS England with entire teams cut to save money and avoid duplication. The Treasury are supposed to be taking an interest in all sorts of proposals, and Project Chainsaw, I mean, they've given it a catchy name, but it doesn't mean much, does it?
I don't think it adds up to much.
No.
When we got into the detail with Pat McFadden about plans to cut the number of civil servants, of course it went up under Brexit and then it went up under COVID. It amounted to a voluntary redundancy scheme. I'm sure many of your listeners will know what they are. They'll have implemented them. It will be done through people deciding to go by themselves, or on their own volition, or natural wastage, people retiring, people moving, getting other jobs, and they're not replacing the civil servants. But this is not. If any of your listeners thought or might have hoped just for one moment that this would be a sort of Musk-style slashing of the funding for civil service.
It's very much the championship division stuff, isn't it? They're not really.
This ain't it.
No. In fact, we're going to talk to Charles Feldman in a minute, so now's a good time to have a look at this quite remarkable piece of video yesterday shot outside the White House, I think, with Donald Trump and Elon Musk having a look over some Tesla cars.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer. Is this just a brake?
Yeah, it's just a brake and an accelerator.
I don't want to.
Give Secret Service a heart attack.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. There's no gears.
This is really amazing. It's really amazing. Let's take a look at it. Think Biden could get into that car? I don't
We can't help it. Charles, a very good morning to you. Charles Feldman's here. The start of that video is actually even funnier when they kind of walk out the door and they see this kind of collection of cars and Elon Musk going, just pick one, Surely that's not the first time he's been in a Tesla, though.
Well, I don't know. He doesn't actually get to drive many cars, President Trump. He's usually driven around, even when he was just a real estate, developer in New York. It may very well be one of the few times he's actually been behind a wheel.
Right. Yes, I suppose so. He's behind the wheel of quite a lot at the moment, though, isn't he, with the tariffs that are being brought in. We've just heard this morning the European Union are going to impose retaliatory measures on US goods starting on 1st of April. I don't imagine he'll worry too much about that in terms of, how much stuff America sells to the EU. But the markets are a bit jittery. I mean, is this going to go on for a while, do you think?
Well, the markets are jittery because, nobody knows from one day to the next what Mr. Trump intends to do with his tariffs. On Monday, there are tariffs. On Tuesday, he's increasing them. On Wednesday, he's decreasing them.
Right.
You know, that kind of uncertainty, as you know, it does not go over well with investors. Investors like some degree of stability, and when they sense that there isn't any stability, that in addition to the fact that some recent economic indicators here in the U.S. have not exactly been, you know, great. So when you add that along with this sort of very quick vacillation on tariffs, it makes people very, very nervous, and you see it reflected in the markets.
And Americans, bless them, don't like to lose money, do they? So, I mean, even those who voted for Trump will not be happy if at the end of the year they're finding that, their 401ks are not worth what they used to be, and their pensions are diminishing.
Yeah, well, that's precisely right. And not only the 401ks going down, but these tariffs, most economists, I think correctly, predict that if these tariffs actually come to pass, it will raise prices for a lot of the very goods that people who voted for Mr. Trump wanted him to bring those prices down. Grocery items, automobiles, home mortgages because of the increased price of building material for homes. So, I mean, he's walking a very, odd tightrope at the moment, because if he wins, if his hunches are correct, and he obviously thinks they are, and if he thinks that these tariffs will win more favorable conditions for the U.S. and bring more manufacturing back to the U.S., then people who voted for him are going to be very ecstatic. On the other hand, if, as I just mentioned, if it turns out that prices for some very basic everyday commodities go up rather than down, which he had promised would happen when he was running for the presidency, that is not going to go over well, even with his most ardent MAGA supporters.
No, quite. Charles, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Charles Feldman, US political analyst there, reporting into us. I mean, I guess it all comes down to, Trump's instincts again, doesn't it? I mean, as we saw with the peace deal with Russia and Ukraine, he so far seems to have been getting that right, even though there have been a few bumps perhaps on the way. Same goes for the economy, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that the thing that Trump has is he has that hinterland, obviously, as a successful businessman, and he's bringing it into government. And I think a lot of people would like to look at Trump and think, well, actually, he's just somebody who is full of a lot of hot air. But actually, when you look at the difficulty, nobody was expecting, when people said, he had that quip, he was going to sort the Ukraine conflict in a day. Yeah. Obviously, it was like, okay, that's a line. Right. But it looks like he's going to sort it within 100 days. Yes. Of taking office.
And certainly sooner than anybody else was planning to do.
And this was a conflict that had no end in sight under Joe Biden. Right. There was simply no resolution to it. We've seen the hostages released, well, not all of them, but at least some of the Israeli hostages released from Gaza, from Hamas, as a result of Donald Trump.
And we've also seen the other Arab states around Gaza actually having conversations about what to do about it, as opposed to doing nothing.
Yeah, and they've come up, Donald Trump, for instance, Donald Trump said, he wanted to turn Gaza into, the Riviera, and a sort of, and everybody had a sort of shock horror reaction to it. But then Egypt and Jordan came up with a plan for their own, £50 billion regeneration project, where actually that wouldn't have happened if suddenly, and this is something that people like Greg Swenson, the Republicans overseas, often talk about. What Trump does is he throws a grenade into the room. Yeah. It sparks people into life, and it says, actually, we need to come up with a solution. Because if we don't do something, Donald Trump's going to do something, and we're not going to like it.
The grenade's going to blow up.
And that's going to cause... So he gets that reaction because, the Middle East conflict had no end in sight under Biden, and it would have, the status quo would have stayed if Harris had won the election back in November. Right. And suddenly now we're getting closer to a peace in the Middle East. We're not there yet, obviously, and certainly in Europe, we can only hope that, given the rhetoric, I think he's confounded his critics again. But of course, people are often silent on this, turning around and actually having quite a hard line. You heard it there from Marco Rubio in that excerpt you played. The ball is now in Russia's court. He's there. Trump is obviously there for peace, but it will of course mean some really difficult concessions and choices that we might otherwise not have wanted to make.
No, but you can't, everything comes at a price, doesn't it? Yeah. Let's have a look at what Mark Carney has to say. He's of course now the Prime Minister of Canada, even though he wasn't actually elected the Prime Minister of Canada, former Bank of England chief, of course. Here's his response to the tariffs.
America is not Canada. And Canada never, ever will be part of America in any way, shape, or form. We didn't ask for this fight, but Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. So the Americans, they should make no mistake, in trade as in hockey, Canada will win.
Yes, well, he talks a good game, but of course Canada had Trump tariffs on American goods long before Trump actually put tariffs on Canadian goods, so he's not entirely being honest there, is he?
This was our former neutral government
so-called, yeah, so-called. I know.
The new Labour,
right? But the bizarre thing is that it turns out, because of the way the Canadian constitution works, he can't take part in any debates, and he can't actually vote in anything because he wasn't elected. So it's all very weird, very Canadian, yeah. 6:51. Coming up, we'll talk to you about criminals laughing at the law under the Labour government because they're getting fewer and fewer long sentences handed out, and some of these violent criminals are actually quite dangerous people, and they'll all be coming out soon. This is Talk.
No, it's ludicrous. I mean, we have been importing, both through legal means and illicit means, Jew-hating savages for the last 10 to 15 years. This is why our Jewish community in this country is so desperate, and many of them thinking of fleeing the country to Israel because they think Israel might be safer. Just imagine what kind of country you're living in when Jewish people in this country think Israel might be safer. You know, and we keep doing this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:54. I'm Mike Graham, with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory every single day. Big spread in the mail today. Theo Usherwood's here with us. Criminals laugh at the law under Labour. And this is Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, basically having a go at Shabana Mahmood. And we've got a little clip for you talking about two-tier justice from yesterday. Here's this.
In 21 days' time, by the Justice Secretary's own admission, we will have two-tier justice. Her plan to fix this won't come into effect for a year. That's unacceptable. As she's been too lazy to do her job, I'll do it for her. Today I am presenting a bill to block these two-tier sentencing guidelines and to fix her mess. It's here, it's ready to go. Will she support it? Will she stand with us on this side of the House for equality under the law? Or will it be two-tier justice with her and two-tier Keir?
My reaction to what has happened in relation to the Sentencing Council's guidelines was very clear when we did the oral statement last week in this House. We will never stand for a two-tier approach to sentencing, but I am actually getting on with fixing the problem rather than looking for a bandwagon to jump on. That is why I have already written to the Sentencing Council. I will be meeting with them later in this week, and I have made it very clear I will consider their role and their powers, and if I need to legislate, I will do so, but I will make sure that whatever changes I bring forward are workable and they deliver the fair justice system that we all need and deserve, and one his government did not deliver.
Well, according to the Sentencing Commission, they're not paying any attention to her.
No, they don't want to.
She might well say she's written to them and she's meeting with them, but they're saying, we're not going to do anything you want. No. We're independent, thanks.
Yeah, and it's another example of judges and telling the politicians that they know best and to butt out because it's up to them. I sometimes listen to Robert Jenrick and I sometimes forget that he actually lost the Conservative leadership election. He does sound he does, doesn't he? You listen to that and you thought actually that.
And I was speaking to somebody yesterday about this and they were sort of defending her style, basically saying that the thing about Kemi Badenoch is that she gives other ministers their kind of their right to speak up on the issues that they feel strongly about or their specialist subjects. He's Justice Minister shadow, so he goes for that, and so she allows other people to do that. I'm not sure I buy that.
She doesn't have the clout.
No.
She doesn't have the ability to tell Robert Jenrick to sit in his box. And Robert Jenrick knows that he has licence to...
I mean, I think I asked him, because we had him on last week, and I said to him, is Kemi Badenoch happy with all of this activity that you seem to be getting up to? And he said, oh, yes, of course, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. Well, they would say that anyway.
Yeah.
Talking of singing from the same hymn sheet, we haven't mentioned reform yet.
No.
I mean, yesterday we had a massive show, which really just concentrated on loads and loads of people ringing in, saying Nigel Farage needs to step down. And I was quite surprised that so many of our readers, listeners rather, and viewers had that view, because they didn't have it last week.
No, it's a really interesting one from any point of view. The problem that Nigel Farage has got is that he doesn't play well with other children.
Yeah.
He just doesn't play well in he's always been a one man band.
Yeah.
And Rupert Lowe, if you look at Lee Anderson, okay, he's got his brand, but Richard Tice plays along with whatever Nigel Farage wants. James Murdoch, who's of course the
he's a sort of invisible man.
Invisible,
you never really see him anyway.
The Thurrock MP, who won unexpectedly. He doesn't say boo to a goose, so it's fine. Apart from Rupert Lowe.
Yeah.
And Rupert Lowe has got his own following, and the divide seems to have gone back now to the beginning of the year. This is where the real problems kicked off, right? Where Elon Musk fell out with Nigel Farage over support for Tommy Robinson. Rupert Lowe's defended Tommy Robinson, and there's a feeling that Farage didn't like. Suddenly Rupert Lowe is stealing his thunder, and that's why he's had to go. And it's all become very unsavoury with these allegations of him threatening Zia Youssef, the party's chairman.
And I was watching his show last night, Nigel. I mean, it was interesting because he was obviously doing all the big stories of the day apart from his own story, and it just seemed a bit incongruous that once that starts to happen, and you go, well, if you're not going to talk about what the big story is because you're in it, then are you really actually doing a service to the people that you're supposed to be representing?
But I completely agree with you, and he's never shied away. So when you do that, it's like that's not Nigel Farage.
That's not the Nigel Farage we know. And this whole business of the police are involved, and there's an investigation. It's all very weird. Anyway, Theo, we've got to run. We're out of time. Thank you very much indeed, Theo Usherwood. There, we've got voice notes galore, and we'll bring them all to you in the next hour. This is, of course, Morning Glory. The news is next.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr.
are not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 7. The sun is coming up. It's peaking up over the horizon. We're getting almost into spring. It's the 12th of March, Wednesday, of course. Very good morning to you. We're here for the duration all the way through until 10 o'clock. The Julie Hartley-Brewer's show from then until 1 o'clock as well. Coming up, we're going to speak to Harriet Baldridge, Shadow Business Minister, and also Tory MP from West Worcestershire. First of all, let's get a voice note from Brian.
Morning, Mike. Brian from South End. Just listening to you about the traffic in London and all that. Did you know that from April, when Khan starts charging for the crossings, the new Silvertown Tunnel, the Blackwall Tunnel, there is no way for a commercial vehicle to cross over now without having to pay a charge. You know, the Blackwall Tunnel will be charged, the Silvertown Tunnel will be charged, and the Dartford crossing will be charged. How on earth are the commercial vehicles meant to get about? It's going to cost them like 15, 30 quid a day to just try and get into work. It's so stupid.
Yeah, it is absolutely utterly insane. I don't understand why they're doing it. I don't understand why they think it's a good idea. I don't understand why they think that by punishing the business people of this country that somehow they're going to create growth, because they're not. People are just going to stop working. People are going to stop doing what they do. I was speaking to a driver this morning who said that his company is going to be going to 0 hours contracts, so the national insurance boost that the government thinks they're going to get simply is not going to happen. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We're still talking about Just Stop Oil. We'll find out what the latest is on Sir Lindsay and his gallivanting around the world. You know, £250,000 of our money he spent taking his wife and all sorts of other people to some very, very plush resorts in places as far-flung as Los Angeles, Canberra, Australia, Singapore, Jakarta, Qatar. Nice work if you can get it, Mr. Speaker. 03444991000. Also, we'll talk about the farmers. Once again, under the cosh, the government has decided to pull subsidies that they were expecting to have throughout the course of the year. They've now been paused, which is now being described as a new betrayal by Tom Bradshaw, the head of the National Farmers Union. We'll find out what Harriet Baldwin has to say about that. Also, of course, the European Union threatening retaliatory tariffs on the United States of America. We'll see where that all ends up. Donald Trump is still very much straddling the world, trying to get a peace deal done in Ukraine, trying to get a peace deal done in Gaza, and trying very hard not to upset the people that run the markets of this world, which are a bit jittery at the moment, thanks to some of the things that he's doing. 03444991000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. I've got this from Doug, slightly tongue-in-cheek. Good morning, Mr. Graham. I operate over 6,000 vehicles in London. Would love to place one of your bumper stickers on each vehicle. Yours sincerely, Mr. S. Khan, City Hall, London, E16. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I'm sure that Mr. Sadiq Khan would like nothing more than to have one of my bumper stickers on the back of one of his many cars, perhaps the armour-coated Land Rover. And Beck says, good morning, Mike. Margaret currently in Tunisia, so they built a rail station with no car parks to stop people using cars. They plan to more or less steal farmland under compulsory purchase, etc. What the hell is happening? Ever since COVID, we the people have been and are continuing to be dictated to as to what we can or cannot do and say. Well, it's certainly costing us all an awful lot more money, isn't it? Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's talk to Harriet Baldwin, Shadow Business Minister and MP for West Worcestershire. Harriet, very good morning to you.
Morning. How
Thank
are you, Mike?
Very well indeed. Thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking this morning about a great many things, including what we do with asylum seekers. We've got record numbers again coming over on these boat crossings. We've been talking as well about the farmers and the farmers having their subsidies stopped. But I wonder if we can start with this idea of kind of the anti-car movement, which seems to be affecting more and more journeys in this country. There's a railway station in Cambridge that's just been built with no car park, so there's nowhere for anybody to park the car. We've got these we've got this new tunnel opening up, the Silvertown Tunnel, which is going to have a toll on it in London, which is going to cost, as we just heard, business people an awful lot of money, commercial, van drivers and that sort of thing. I mean, is it not time we gave taxpayers and car drivers a bit of a break in this country?
Well, yeah, so the MP for West Worcestershire, I think most of my constituents rely on the car to get around and to get to work. And so my county council, which is, I'm pleased to say, Conservative controlled, is very pro-car and repairs the roads regularly, has built a new parkway station where there's a car park expansion plan. Yeah. So I think it is important to recognise that if we want growth in this country, people need to move around, and most of them do that by a vehicle that needs somewhere to park.
Well, exactly right. But unfortunately, as you just heard, if you're driving a commercial van into sort of central London now, you're probably going to be paying something in the order of 30 quid a day just before you even, done any work.
Well, this city-dwelling government and, of course, the Mayor of London have proved themselves to be very anti-car, anti-rural areas. There's another story out today about the farmers, and yet another blow for our farming communities, where the government is stopping the Sustainable Farming Initiative. And this is after imposing inheritance tax on farmers, which is going to really damage the food security of this country. So as a MP for a rural area, I'm really disturbed to see how much damage they're doing to our farming communities.
And that seems to be the thing, doesn't it? I mean, everywhere you look, sort of in every corner of every room, there's another tax rise going on. We've got something in the Sun today called the Bevy Levy, which is apparently aimed at reducing packaging. So they're going to put £1 roughly on the cost of 12 bottles of beer that you buy in a box at the supermarket. Everything seems to be going up, and there doesn't seem to be any respite out there. I was saying earlier this morning, I was talking to the guy that drove me into work today, and his company, which I'm not going to name, said that they're now putting every driver on a 0 hours contract because they don't want to pay the extra national insurance hike that's coming in April. And I suspect a lot of other firms will be doing the same. So they won't even get what they thought they were going to get in national insurance. They might even get less.
They might even get less, and also it's leading to higher inflation. So You know, last July when the general election happened, inflation had got back to its target level of 2%. Inflation is a terrible tax, particularly on those on the lowest incomes. And as a result of the measures in the budget last year, we heard from the Governor of the Bank of England last week that it's actually increased inflation. And inflation is now up to 3% because another way that businesses try to adapt is they try to pass on the cost increases, the tax increases to their customers. So it's not good for anyone. And as you say, it could end up with us getting lower tax revenue anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. And the piece in the Mail today saying that there's a £6 billion package of welfare cuts coming down the pike. Basically, Keir Starmer has said that the benefit system is unsustainable, indefensible and unfair. And I'm quite happy to probably put some of the blame for that on the Tory government over the last 14 years, because benefit payments and benefit claims have massively increased in that period, haven't they?
Well, since the pandemic, if you recall, during the pandemic, we were very, very generous with a furlough for so many people across the country, for which they were very grateful. But I do think, we had plans to tighten up the welfare rules again, because we're not in a pandemic at the moment. We need people to see that work pays. For many, many people at the moment, they seem to have lost that keenness to go out to work and earn an income for their family. So we do need to look very, very hard at the welfare budget. We need to make sure that it's good value for the taxpayer, that it's there for us as a safety net. And so we have had plans to tackle the safety, and we would call on the government to be ambitious.
Yes, but the problem is, of course, you've got an awful lot of people who are working part-time now who will fall into the national insurance category that they weren't in before. And it might well mean that firms will just lay these people off, or just say,
well, you're absolutely right. If you bring in if you bring in a tax on a job and you increase the tax on the job, it's not surprising that there are fewer jobs at the end of it. So you're absolutely right that in order to get people off welfare, you need to have a strong job market, and it's very worrying what the government's doing to the job market.
Right. I mean, they seem particularly disingenuous, this government, and I've seen plenty of disingenuous governments in my time, as I'm sure you have. But they say one thing and they do something completely different. You know, I mean, Keir Starmer, for example, has said that he's going to have a war on quangos, but it turns out that he's actually created 27 of them since July, and they talk about saving you money on energy and capping prices. They put the prices up 3 times. There seems to be nothing that they promised to do that they've actually done.
No, and they talk about growth, but actually the budget that Rachel Reeves brought in last October was an absolute growth killer, in that the economy was actually growing at the fastest rate in the G7 in the first half of last year. And then it stopped in its tracks, and it's pretty clear why. And it's because of the extra £70 billion of public spending, borrowing, taxes that Rachel Reeves brought in every year for the next 5 years.
Yeah, it really is difficult to see a way out of this sort of economic downturn that we're currently in, because if anything, it looks like in April it will get a lot worse.
It's really tough, and as His Majesty's loyal opposition, we will continue to call on the Chancellor to reverse some of these things, and hopefully, eventually, she may see the light that you can increase taxes on good things like jobs, and you end up getting fewer jobs as a result.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, and your colleague Andrew Griffith, who I think we had on yesterday, he put out a tweet yesterday saying Companies House register shrinks for the first time ever under Rachel Reeves, and apparently we're losing a millionaire pretty much every 45 minutes.
It's really terrible, and indeed the only growth that I can see in the business statistics is the growth of businesses in critical distress, which has gone up 50% in the last quarter.
Yeah, I know, it is extraordinary, isn't it? Let me ask you about a new poll that's out this morning as well. This is from YouGov, a new poll which basically has Labour reform and the Tories pretty much neck and neck in a sort of 3-way race, which shows that the reform has gone down slightly in recent days. This is polling based on questions asked on Sunday and Monday. The government has a lead on 24%, down 2 points. Reform now on 23%, also down. The Tories apparently have gained 1 point to 22%. What do you put all this down to, do you think?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that there will be a real poll on the 1st of May in many counties, like my county of Worcestershire, where I hope the good people of Worcestershire will return once again, a well-managed, Conservative controlled council, because it's important. It keeps your council tax bills down lower. And as I said earlier, they back the car driver and people getting to work. But you know, it's a marathon, not a sprint, until the next general election. We've got to show that we are under new leadership and we change. We've got some important proposals today for your listeners to look at, which are around tightening up our asylum and immigration system. And we don't think that Labour's borders bills goes anywhere near far enough. And we're proposing some changes to those rules. And in particular for asylum seekers, you know, a bit like a student loan, over time, if they are granted asylum, to pay back the costs of the accommodation that they enjoyed while their claim was being heard.
But doesn't that mean that they'll then be stuck here paying us back for money that they didn't know they were going to owe?
Well, this is people who are granted asylum in our country who have, during the period of their claim, incurred some accommodation costs, and we're going to treat that a bit like a student loan, that should they remain in this country and be earning above a certain threshold, that they will pay that money back over time.
But isn't it also important to limit the number of asylum claims that are successful? Because we alone in this country seem to be about the highest when it comes to how many asylum claims are actually granted. You know, in France they grant very many fewer than we do. I think it's only about a third of people who apply for asylum in France actually get it. Whereas in this country it turns out to be, you know, practically everyone who applies for asylum gets it.
Yeah, and we want to tighten up on some of those things so that the European Court of Human Rights doesn't apply in immigration cases, so that if you've got some kind of criminal record that you get sent back to your home country. It's why we think it's a shame that the government cancelled the Rwanda scheme, which was a deterrent that we were planning to bring in to stop people illegally crossing the channel by boat. And we've seen a record number of those crossings during this period of good weather that we've enjoyed in recent days. And so we think that the government hasn't gone anywhere near far enough with their borders bill, and we're proposing a series of amendments to it.
And what would you do with asylum claimants, perhaps, who have been successful but who can't pay the money back or who don't pay the money back? Would you deport them?
It would be like a student loan. So, as you know, with student loans, you start paying that back once you're earning above a certain threshold.
Right,
so
yeah, but what if they just don't?
way.
Yeah, but what if they don't pay it back though, or they just don't pay you?
Well, we've proposed some changes to the leave to remain rules so that we, as you know, once you've been in the country for a period of time, which we're proposing we double, you can apply for leave to remain. And at that point, we would evaluate whether people had made a contribution and whether or not they therefore qualified for that leave to remain and or needed to be asked to leave the country.
So how long would you be in the country for before you can get leave to remain then under your new scheme?
We're proposing to double that from 5 years to 10 years.
Right. And would they be working in that period?
So they would be potentially, if they've had an asylum claim granted, they would potentially have been working in that period. Yeah.
I thought they couldn't work as asylum seekers, though.
They can't. I'm saying if it's once they've been granted asylum, they can work, but not obviously when they are claiming asylum.
Right. OK. It's going to be a bit confusing, I think. Final question for you. Rupert Lowe.
Yes.
From Reform. He says he's considering keeping his options open, might want to join the Tory party. Would you welcome him?
Has he really said that?
He has.
Well, listen, far be it for me to intrude on the Reform Party arguments. I think our party is an open and welcoming party where we welcome people who share our values, and I would encourage everyone who supports our campaign to change the government at the next general election to join the Conservative Party. So shout out to all your listeners. You're very welcome.
So is Rupert Lowe welcome then?
Well, look, I don't know the specifics of that situation. So,
well, he says he's thinking about it.
He's thinking about it.
Those are the specifics. Well, it's a yes or no question, really.
Well, I would suggest he sit down with Kemi Badenoch, our party leader, and have a chat. But yes, everyone is very welcome to join our party if they share our values and want to see the end of this Labour government. OK. Thanks for talking to us. Harriet Baldwin there. I think she said that she would welcome Rupert Lowe, but not quite with open arms, maybe. Maybe around the back of the bike sheds, you know, do a deal of some kind and see what can happen. But we shall see.
Interesting, that, wasn't it? Shadow Business Minister, MP for West Worcestershire. We will have matters arising from that conversation coming up very shortly. Let's get a voice note from Luke.
Morning, Mike. Good show as always. I thought or wondered if you might be able to shed some light on the new planning bill for me. I have heard rumours that part of the bill is farmers or landowners are not going to be able to get the full price of value of the land with the planning permission. Instead, it will be or the government will get planning permission on it, and they will buy the land from the landowner for the farm value, not with the planning value, but the government will pocket that once they've done it. Just wondered about your thoughts. It seems, again, another great decision from our government.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think that is what I have read, certainly. That's my understanding of how they would handle that. They would pay the lower fee for the land rather than the higher fee. With planning permission, obviously, it would be worth a lot more money. So my understanding is that the government would offer the farmer less money to sell the land just as farming land. But then if it's got planning permission, they would then pocket the difference if they could then sell it on to some developers, bizarrely. One from Pete, who says this: wooden houses. Scotland have been using wood frame building for many years without issues. Scandinavian countries with both rain and snow use wood with houses easily lasting over 100 years. Yeah, but it's drier in those places, right? And in Scotland, I mean, I lived in Scotland for 10 years. I never saw a wooden house. You know, certainly not in Glasgow, and certainly not in Edinburgh, and certainly not in most parts of the country that I went to. And I just think building houses out of wood is just not something that we do in this country. But, you know, you can try and convince me otherwise. Coming up, we're going to speak to James Oliveira-Agnew, Assistant Secretary for the Criminal Bar Association, because we've got yet another story of a ghastly, evil criminal, Carl Clifford, who's going to die in jail. Refusing to appear, refusing to turn up in the court to be sentenced. We'll talk about how people can get away with that coming next.
Say woman whilst you're having your life saved.
Right.
It has to be a person with breasts. Can you imagine about to take your last gasp and say, don't call me a woman?
Right. I know.
I mean, what is it, man?
It's ridiculous because, again, they're using words which don't make any sense. You know, call somebody a woman, you know what you're talking about, right? Yeah. But if you call somebody a person with breasts, it's already longer. It's already not accurate because a woman might not necessarily have breasts. What about a woman who's had a mastectomy? What about a woman who perhaps is less well endowed than another woman? You know, it's not accurate.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. We've got some great voice notes coming in. We've got some other notes coming in. We'll tell you how to get bumper stickers as well during this hour. Charles says this from Loughton. Originally, he says, my old gran in her younger day was confronted with a flasher up Alderton Hill in Loughton in the 1960s. She dealt with him with a hefty whack on the exposed area with her umbrella. He went off howling. Brilliant. That's a very good idea. Obviously, we've got that story on the front page of The Sun, which we'll get into in a moment. Let's get a voice note from Nick on Farmers.
Morning, Mike. It's Nick Moore from Loughborough. This government is actually literally waging war on farmers. It sees farmers as a hindrance to their net zero lunacy plans and is doing all it can to get rid of them, just as they tried in the Netherlands, which backfired on them, incidentally. But this is nothing more than a land grab. They detest the farmers, and if we're not careful, we're going to lose them.
I think you're absolutely right. It's terribly shocking what's going on in our rural communities, and the fact that the government, particularly the Environment Agency under Steve Reed, who once was in charge of Lambeth Council, by the way, that's how much he knows about the farming countryside, just keeps basically squeezing them and squeezing them and squeezing them, squeezing the land, squeezing the stock, squeezing the prices. Everything that's going on, if you're a farmer right now, is bad news. Let's talk, though, now about some other bad news in the papers this morning. It's the sentencing of the triple killer, the crossbow killer known as Kyle Clifford, who's 26 years old. He was given 3 whole-life tariffs yesterday for the murders of his ex-girlfriend, Louise Hunt, 25 years old, her sister Hannah, who was 28, and her mum Carol, who was 61. Mum Carol, of course, married to Sky and Radio 5 Live's racing broadcaster, whose name is John Hunt, and he made a very impactful impact statement yesterday. But one of the problems with this case, like many lately, is that Kyle Clifford refused to be in the court for the sentencing hearing, refused to face those people who wanted to see his face when he was sent down. James Oliveira Agnew's here with us, Assistant Secretary for the Criminal Bar Association. James, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. It seems to be something that's happening more and more. I don't know whether we're just noticing it more and more, but there seems to be a sort of a cavalcade of these ghastly characters who don't wish to sit in the courtroom to hear what their fate is going to be. They don't wish to face the families of those who have been murdered. We had the problem with the Southport killer as well. Is it something that's happening more and more, or is it just our imagination?
I think it's probably something that's being reported on more and more now. It's obviously a story that runs and people pick up on it. So it's something that has always happened. It's obviously for the victims' families, and the families are victims, of course, in these crimes as well. It's something that they feel is important that somebody attends court and faces sentence. I have to say, Mike, I think unfortunately this is one of those stories where the headline of being forced to attend court is one thing, but the realities of it, I think, are entirely different. And there's 3 major problems with any conversation about this. I think problem 1 is that we don't have enough dock officers in court generally anyway. So to try and get them to force people who don't want to be there is a lot of pressure to put them under. 2, victims' families think something will happen in court. The problem is, if you get one of these people, and we've all had them, who turn up to court, they've been forced there, they disrupt, they laugh, they joke, they swear at, say, Mr. Hunt while he's making his, as you say, very impassioned speech. The power the judge has is that he can send that person back down to the cells and they can carry on without them, which is a bit of a nonsense if you force them to come to court in the first place. And the third thing, Mike, I'd say this: we have so many problems getting people who want to come to court actually to court. We lose hours every day in court time because prison vans are late. I think perhaps I'd concentrate more on getting those people to court before I'm worried about doing something else. But that's the sort of general principle.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose people would say, well, even if they have to be restrained in some way, or they have to be somehow silenced in some way, shape or form, however that would be done, they should be forced to be there, because it seems to be that justice is not served unless they are.
I understand that. The difficulty is that a court obviously has to have the power to punish people for not doing something they're supposed to do. People who are facing these triple life sentences, obviously he's never going to come out of prison. What do you do? What is the punishment for it? And who is going to be responsible for gagging and tying up these people to sit them in the dock? If they're screaming and shouting and carrying on, is that actually what victims' families want? Is that going to help them with the closure? I understand why they want it, and of course, sympathies go out. I've been fortunate never to be in that position. I hope I never am. But I think the practicalities of it are such that while it sounds good on paper, the principle of it is simply not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, it seems ridiculous in this case as well, because Kyle Clifford basically is in a wheelchair. So, I mean, surely somebody could have just put him in the courtroom, couldn't they? It's not like he would be able to resist them.
Absolutely, but of course, as I'm sure you and your viewers are all going to be too familiar with, red tape of everything. I'm sure that there are 101 forms you have to fill in to get the right equipment to bring people to court.
Yeah.
We're run by 3 different companies: the court estate, Serco, the prison estate, all 3 different things. Everyone has to work together. That they don't. So I think it's a good idea in principle. If we get the fundamentals of actually bringing people to court on time in prison vans working, then I think this kind of thing would be much easier. But no, absolutely, I can see why people are outraged about it. But I think, unfortunately, in this case, it's one of those ones where I'm not sure that even if somebody like him was dragged to court, it would have the closure necessarily that the victims' families are after. And I think it may be more disruptive in the end. And his speech yesterday in court was brilliant. And the impact of that, I think, goes far and wide.
Yes, I'm sure. James, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. James Oliveira Agnew, Assistant Secretary for the Criminal Bar Association. We've got lots more to do, lots more to get in on this show. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the trade war, which is sort of pending and unfolding before our very eyes, from Donald Trump to Canada to the European Union, who have this morning said that they're going to impose retaliatory measures on US goods starting on April the 1st to retaliate against Donald Trump's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium, as they call it in America. We've got Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, threatening to beat America in its own game, just like they do in hockey. We'll see where this all goes, but certainly a bit of turmoil in the markets. But again, turmoil in the markets often happens for all sorts of reasons. Uncertainty doesn't breed for an awful lot of stability in the markets and in the economy, but normally speaking, things do calm down after a while. We'll find out what it's all about coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:34. I did put it to our first guest in this hour, Harriet Baldwin, the Shadow Minister for Business and the MP for West Worcestershire, whether or not Rupert Lowe would be welcomed into the Tory party. He's saying he's keeping his options open. He might consider joining the Tories. She wasn't entirely enthusiastic, you'd have to say, but went down that kind of, oh, we welcome everybody into our party as long as they agree with us. Yeah, well, first tell us what you agree with, and then we'll tell you if we agree with it. I think that's the way most people would say the Tories are at the moment. They're in a bit of a bad place. But it looks neck and neck now in terms of the latest YouGov poll, which is out this morning, where they're all kind of there or thereabouts, 24%, 23%, 22%, Labour, Conservative, Reform. Reform lost a couple of points, probably because of some of the stuff that's been going on. We talked a lot about it yesterday. We'll continue to talk about it as well throughout the course of the day today. We've asked both Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe to come on the show. So far, we haven't had a positive response from either. We'll keep trying, see what we can get. Debbie in Hawley says this, Mike, when you park your bike at a railway station, it all seems to get stolen. Yeah, probably true. Let's talk to, well, I'll tell you what, we get a voice note from Tony first. Have a listen to
Mike, great show as usual. My blood is boiling. Did anybody vote for these policies, this lying socialist green government? They're lying on every single thing. How can they get away with this? The farmers, do you think they've done enough to the farmers? Obviously, they're taking the land right at a low price, rock bottom price, obviously because they want to build solar farms and windmills and put them on there for this green agenda, which nobody wants. They're killing the company, they're killing the economy. It's just going to get worse. Where will it end? It's just ridiculous. I'm sick of this.
Yeah, well, just in case you weren't sick enough, I've got even more bad news for you, because apparently the government would like us to chip in and help Manchester United build a new stadium. Unbelievable, in the Sun. Going clown, going clown, going clown is the headline. United to build a new £2 billion, 100,000 seat stadium. But grumpy fans say it looks like a circus tent. Well, it doesn't look great, does it? It looks like something from the Middle East as well. And it's going to cost so much money that they want some money to come from the taxpayer. Well, I don't think so. Thank you very much indeed. I don't fancy paying for a Premier League football club to have subsidies from the taxpayer when they pay their own players tens of millions of pounds a year. Maybe they should chip in for it. Let's talk to Edmund Greaves, though, who's editor at Mouthy Money. Probably knows a thing or two about building stadiums. But let's talk to him about tariffs and how they're going to affect us, if indeed at all. Edmund, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. People talk about tariffs, and they're talking about them an awful lot at the moment because of the activity that's happening in North America, particularly between Canada and Mexico and the US of A. The European Union this morning have come out and said they're going to impose retaliatory measures on US goods starting on April the 1st as well. What does it all mean for the sort of the humble consumer, the people who are paying for things that they actually need to buy to either eat or to live or to to build things onto their houses?
Yeah, so the thing about putting tariffs on steel and aluminium is that it's quite high up the economic industrial chain. But the problem with it is it's quite an important commodity. So ultimately that feeds through at the end of the day, and it takes a little bit of time. It feeds through into the prices we pay for all sorts of goods and services. If you think those kind of products go into things like cars, it goes into buildings, it goes into all sorts of different areas of the economy that will ultimately land up in higher inflation rates. Then the higher inflation rates mean that we'll end up with higher interest rates for longer. We've been talking about interest rates for what feels like years now. It's not going to get any better with these things happening. The panic in kind of stock market that we're seeing at the moment is going to have an impact on people's pensions and investments and that kind of thing. Although I would stress that these are very short-term, volatility movements, and most people should be saving for the very long term and should not be getting panicked about what's going on, basically. But yeah, inflation is the big thing that this could have an impact on people ultimately.
Yes, I mean, over in Canada and the United States, they're talking about the price of home-produced goods actually going up as a result of tariffs being put on other countries. How does that work?
Yeah, so tariffs are quite a weird thing. You're basically imposing a 25% tax on companies that import steel and aluminium to the US. Right. Trump's doing this because he wants more companies to buy homemade steel and aluminium.
Yeah.
But obviously the calculation here, it depends on whether, US steel and aluminium is cheaper because the 25% tariff has made the foreign, steel more expensive. And that's, that's hard to tell, particularly when, countries like China dump metals on the market at very low prices. And, this is part of the reason why he's doing it.
Right.
But, I think the real thing here is it's like a negotiating position, isn't it? And he did this in his first term, where it does these kind of extraordinary acts that gets everybody very upset.
Yeah.
And then it's okay, let's have a chat, let's come to a deal, and it's all this kind of Donald Trump art of the deal thing that he's got going.
It does seem to be a negotiating tactic, as you say, because he's already, I think, it's hard to keep up actually, but he threatened Mexico with tariffs, then decided to withdraw them on the sort of 11th hour, did the same with Canada, but now he's put them back onto Canada. I don't think he's put them back onto Mexico, but it's difficult to know, when it's starting, when it's finishing, how long it's going to be for, you just don't know, do you?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why the stock market is reacting in the way it is. So in the past month, the S&P 500 is down 8%. FTSE even, which is, the UK's biggest index, is down 3.5% in the past month. These are not kind of crazy moves. These are, when we have uncertainty and this kind of thing, this is not, untypical. What they're really reacting here to is the tariffs are obviously the focal point of this kind of worries, but there is a wider issue here in the, creating higher costs for consumers, slowing down business, all this kind of thing could cause a recession in the US ultimately. And if the US, as the world's largest economy, goes into recession, it's going to have an impact on everybody else, really. And that's what's got everybody kind of very, very worried. But, there's very mixed opinions out there whether we're really going to get a recession. US labour market report came in yesterday. It was, again, a bit softer but mixed. There's a lot of lack of clarity, and that's what's making stock markets kind of volatile, basically.
Yes, absolutely right. Good to talk to you, Edmund Greaves. Thank you very much indeed, editor at Mouthy Money. Let's get a voice note from Sue on Carl Clifford.
Morning, Mike. Sue from Farncombe here. Regarding that thug who refuses to go into court, you send your officers in there, you handcuff him, foot restraints, put them in a prison wheelchair. They're a bit different from normal wheelchairs. You wheel him into and tie him in it. You wheel him into court, done and dusted. What is wrong with people these days? My God.
You could do it, couldn't you? We've spoken about this before, because there's been other instances where this has happened, and I always get the same answer from the lawyers or from the prison association guards who say, it's not for us to manhandle the people into positions where they would be forced to go into a court, as a health and safety issue and all of that. What you're describing there, Sue, sounds to me like the way Hannibal Lecter got transported, from one part of America to the other, where they put him on like sort of a luggage trolley and just had him in a straitjacket. I would do that. I don't see why you wouldn't. Honestly, why not? This guy's in a wheelchair, right, because of injuries he inflicted on himself after he murdered those 3 beautiful women. I don't think he deserves to be treated particularly well. Why should he? And if he doesn't want to listen to it, just gag him and make him sit there and listen to it. Absolutely. I would go straight along with that, Sue, and I think many people would. Ricky's in London, wants to talk to me about Shabana Mahmood. Ricky, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
What can I do for you, sir?
Right, the sentencing guidelines. Can we call it what it is? All I'm hearing is 2-tier policing, bias, and all this.
Yeah.
And what worries me is we're doing exactly the same thing as we did with the grooming gangs. We're not calling it what it is.
Yeah.
So when we refer to this thing, can we call it? When you interview a politician, can you say, what are you going to do about this racist policy?
Yeah.
Because there's a big difference. When you talk about 2-tier policing, there's a big difference between policing a protest and showing bias bringing out a policy that is enshrined in law that discriminates against a group of people because of their colour.
Yeah.
There's a massive difference.
Yes.
And
to be fair to Robert Jenrick, he is saying that. He's calling it a racist policy.
He didn't at the start. I noticed at the start, because when he first started speaking about it, he said, this is too blatant bias, 2-tier policing and all that. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, this is pure and utter racism that they want to enshrine in law.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And when you think about it, when people talk about the farmers, they're waging war on farmers. Well, what's the common denominator with farmers? They're all the white indigenous population, and now you've got all this sentencing guidelines that discriminate against white people. They're literally going to war against us.
Yeah.
And I'm amazed that the country isn't kicking off, because if it happens to Muslims or black people, all hell will be breaking loose.
Yeah.
So I'm amazed that it isn't kicking off big time. But this, it's getting crazy, Mike.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. You're right, Ricky. Thanks for your call. Makes a very good point. It is a racist policy, and of course, Shabana Mahmood says she's going to be sitting down with this sentencing commission people to make sure that it doesn't happen. But they're saying, we're not going to let you do that. We're going to do what we want, because we're independent. We don't have to do what you want, which is a ludicrous position for any government minister to be in, but particularly the Justice Minister, if you can't actually order judges not to do something. That seems to me to be insane. This from Hoppy. Sean in Cheshire, I should say. I used to commute to the train station by bike. It got stolen. The bike park area was on the platform without CCTV coverage, which meant every time a train came, the bikes got stolen. Guess what? British Transport Police also told me the CCTV they did have wasn't working. No investigation, only a crime number. Then they offered grief counselling. I mean, for God's sake. I asked them, wouldn't it be bloody easy to fix the CCTV? Well, you would think, wouldn't you? Well, this Cambridge South, this new station they've put up, doesn't have a car park, right? So the people who live near it are up in arms, because they're saying, well, people who will drive here expecting to find a car park will go, well, I've got to park somewhere, so they'll just park in the street, outside people's houses, causing absolute mayhem and chaos. Ridiculous. Karen says the recording of that victim impact statement should be played loudly in his cell on repeat so they can hear every single word of it. Yeah, I would just play it continually, to be honest. You know, put him in his cell, you're there for life, and you're going to have to listen to this every single day, for every minute of every single day, except for when we let you out, briefly, for a bit of an exercise. I know he's in a wheelchair, so you don't even have to do that. Ernie says this, Mike, you wouldn't have to drag prisoners into the dock to hear their victim's family. You could give them an ultimatum, turn up, or you will get no visitors or treats like TV or laptops, and give them time to really think about the consequences of not getting them. And if they still don't turn up, play the whole court hearing through the sound system into their cell. Absolutely right. I think they can do that. But, you know, the trouble is, you know, people in this country who run things are so worried about upsetting people. Even worse, horrible mass killers like this character, Carl Clifford, killed 3 innocent women, right, in such a ghastly and brutal way. I don't think he gets to make any choices about what happens to his life or what happens in the court. He just has to do what he's told. Why the hell should we be listening to him? It's 7:46.
Absolutely, and that's why it's making us a laughing stock. I mean, it's very clear now that what I've been arguing for a long time, and I've heard some Labour MPs recently on panels that I've been involved in, we need to reform the UN conventions on refugees to recognise the new millennia, the way that people are just coming across to economic reasons, not really fleeing torture. We need to change the European Court of Human Rights and, in our case, leave the ECHR.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 10 minutes to 8. I got this from Mark in Coventry. Mike, how is it Carl Clifford gets 3 whole life sentences, yet the scumbag responsible for the Southport murders can be out in 40 years? Well, I think, Mark, that's due to the fact that when he committed the offence, he was a minor. He was under the age of 18, which, I mean, I think means he can't get a whole life sentence as a result of that. This from Lynn in Devon, a slightly different aspect of the news this morning. St John's Ambulance are calling women a person with breasts, apparently. Why are they not calling a man a person with testicles? How demeaning for women to become just a body part. I, for one, will stop supporting any charity that goes down this route. Great show as ever. Lynn, you're absolutely right. How to do CPR and use a defibrillator on a person with breasts is what it says in the St John Ambulance new guidelines for their workforce, which does seem to be completely and utterly ludicrous, doesn't it? Now, coming up, we're going to talk to Lexi Hambro. She's a mother. She's been forced to take her son out of a private school, and he's been forced to go to a state school. But, of course, like many people that we've talked about in the past, the schools in question around where she lives have not got any space. Or have not got the ability to take her son on. And as a result of that, her son has to go, I think, 45 minutes of a journey each way to go to school. We reported on this a few months back when it became clear that in Surrey, apparently, there were no school places in state schools for kids coming out of private schools because, for one reason or another, their parents can't afford to keep them there. So let's find out from Lexi how this actually happened and what it's like to deal with. Lexi, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks very much for joining us. Tell us what happened. Tell us when your son had to move out of the private school and how hard it's been for you to find a place for him to go now.
Sure, yeah. He's currently at Madewell Hall School, still there. The school is closing because of the VAT, and also Uppingham School have decided to close it.
Yeah.
So we are now 160 parents in a situation where we need to find our children's school places.
Right.
Now, quite remote, so there's not that many schools around. The state sector have given a couple of places to children who needed to leave school immediately within 2 weeks, which has caused absolute chaos for those poor little children. And now, basically, the school that we have been able to get our son into, it is a private school, and I'll explain that in a second, the reasons why. It's 45 minutes drive each way. So when we're doing that, basically twice a day, it's terrible. Now, one of the parents at school has had to accept a state position because they cannot afford to educate their child because of the VAT,
right.
Which is 50 minutes away, and their local government have to pay for the taxi, which, I think about 18,000. So it begs to, you have to ask the question, how is this allowed to happen?
Yeah.
Our son is very intelligent. He's a member of Mensa. When going to look at schools, not all schools will educate him because he's that far ahead.
Yeah.
So he rejected from one school for being too bright and not fitting in their class.
Right.
So we are in a...
Only in Britain can you get rejected for being too bright, right?
Honestly, you've got no idea. We actually moved to this area only 2 years ago because Madewell were able to educate our son. So we're having to move again and trying to explain to him, the reasons behind this, 10 years old.
Yeah.
He doesn't fully understand it. Now, what we've got a situation is that the school could be continued to be run.
Yeah.
However, Uppingham School have rejected the proposal on ridiculous reasons. So my big bugbear, as well as why we're paying this VAT, is why aren't the government stepping in saying, actually, you've got a great proposal here. The school can continue to run privately, thus taking away, the state school places that are desperately needing the teachers. Yet Uppingham are saying, absolutely not. We're not allowing the school to continue. The trustees are not allowing it. Why isn't there any help for schools that are trying to do this? And we're not the only school either. There are other schools trying to step in, to basically run their own school and continue. But there are no state positions around here, state places for children of a certain age. So what are we supposed to do?
Well, that's right. And one of the supposed advantages of this policy was that more teachers would be made available to schools in the state sector, which would mean then that there would be more classrooms, there would be more ability to teach more people. That clearly hasn't happened. And once again, it looks like a piece of Labour policy that they haven't really thought through.
I don't think this thought through, because children have to leave immediately if they're offered a state position, state place rather. And while some are able to do that, not all parents can drop everything to move their children. And also, where is the money? The money should be ring fenced. So why isn't it being ring fenced? That's being taken from the VAT and put in the state sector. There's no statistics being carried out. There's no proper research being done into this, and it's an absolute shambles. I believe 49 schools have now closed since this was announced.
Wow. And there must be many, many parents like the one you described who are having to have their child sent in a taxi to a school, dozens of miles away, which is disrupting enough for the family, but very expensive for the taxpayer.
Absolutely, very expensive for the taxpayer, because at the end of the day, their local government, if they can't find local authority rather, if they can't find a place for the child, whilst they will kick up a fuss and try not to pay the taxi service, they have to. They're obliged to. And there are lots of children in this situation. And then you've got to look at all the teachers. Where do they go? There aren't jobs for everyone. Do they have to sell the house and move? They can't automatically just sell and move. It's absolute shambles, to be honest with you.
Yes, and so many children now displaced and having to find presumably a school that they wouldn't have chosen first chance if they could get it, and presumably if they can find a place nearer home, they'll be moving again in the course of their school career.
Yes, absolutely. And what we haven't talked about is all the children with special educational needs.
Right.
You can't just slot those children into any school.
Right.
Some plans, some don't. It's like, I guess, a child with dyslexia is similar to, a child or a person with mobility needs. You can't give them a particular wheelchair or a particular walking stick and say, get there. So why are they being discriminated? It's really bad. And there are not enough places, there are not enough teachers, and teachers can't be just moved around from school to school because they have lives too.
Of course, and I presume some children with special educational needs won't be able to be transported long distances either.
No, I'm sure some of them couldn't be. I don't know. Our school doesn't have that type of child, but we do have enough children that are dyslexic, dyspraxic, and still parents now have not got a school place for their child in September. We were told about this the first day back in January. Trustees for the Uppingham charity, Madewell charity, made the decision last October, but they failed to tell the parents until January. So everyone is competing for places, and there's not enough places. So I'm not sure what everyone will do, and we're getting to the stage where it's Easter holidays, so everyone will be away, and there aren't enough places. So what are we supposed to do? And no one from local authorities have been in touch. No one from the government has reached out and said, what can we do to help? It's our issue, this has happened. So what can we do? Absolutely nothing.
It's shocking, absolutely shocking. Lexi, really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. Let's keep in touch. Let us know how it all pans out. Lexi Hambro there, speaking for an awful lot of parents, I think, who have been forced out of the school that they want their child to go into. It's absolutely shocking. Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. I've just seen a statement from Rupert Law on X where he says that the Reform leadership tried to silence him on the Pakistani rape gangs, deporting them. They tried to silence him because he wants to deport everybody who was actually complicit in it. That would be the imams, the families, and everybody else who knew, because lots of people in their communities would have known exactly what was going on. And I'm totally in favour of that. And I totally agree with Rupert. They all need to be deported back to Pakistan to rot in jail, because we don't want these people raping our kids in this country. And I'd just be interested to know what other people think about that, what other Reform members think about that. Because I think dragging a Reform Party to the centre to be silent on this is no reform at all. That's absolutely pointless. We've already got wet Tories. We don't need another one.
Mark speaks for an awful lot of people, I think, who voted for reform. We'll have more after the news.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is...
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 8. The sun is up. It's looking a little bit sort of, I would say, grey out there this morning. It was very cold yesterday. I wore the wrong coat, which was never a good idea. But I was down with the Taxpayers Alliance yesterday doing a little podcast, which will be out, I think, tomorrow. On the subject of all manner of things, including what's going on at reform. We just heard from Mark there saying that he's not happy with what seems to be the treatment of Rupert Lowe. We asked the Conservative member of the Shadow Cabinet earlier this morning whether Rupert Lowe would be welcomed into the Tory party. She didn't seem entirely sure whether she wanted to invite him in or not. So it's I guess the gloves are off, the chips are down, but still the jury's out. I don't know how many more metaphors I can get in to the intro of this particular hour, but we're going to talk in this hour to Esther McVey, former Minister for Common Sense, of course, knows a thing or two about common sense. Maybe she'll tell me what she makes of the Rupert Lowe situation with reform. Also, coming up, we'll talk about farmers. They've been betrayed again, it would seem. There's tariffs being threatened by the European Union on Donald Trump. The markets are a little bit unsteady because of some of the things that he's been doing. We've got an incredible story on the front page of The Sun this morning about Labour aid to Wes Streeting, who we knew was done for indecent exposure. It now turns out that the man whose name is Sam Gould was actually exposing himself to a 13-year-old girl who he then followed down the street. He's quit as the Health Secretary's aide. He's been suspended by the Labour Party, but he remains a councillor in Redbridge, which seems extraordinary to me. How on earth can he still keep a job in those circumstances, given what he's been found guilty of? Absolutely extraordinary stuff. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We'll also keep talking about the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle, who's still in trouble for his round-the-world jaunts. There's a train station that's been built with no car park up in Cambridge, which has got a few of you quite exercised. And also, we've been talking about Carl Clifford, the triple killer, who basically has refused to appear in court. And an awful lot of you very angry about that, saying he should be made to. Drag him kicking and screaming, whatever he's doing, bring him into the courtroom, make him sit and listen to the wise words of the terrible, terrible anguish that he caused by killing 3 innocent women, one of whom is former girlfriend, and of course a beautiful family, completely and utterly ripped apart. And he gets to just sit in a room because he doesn't want to face up to what he did. Absolutely wrong, absolutely disgraceful. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Now, we've been talking about a great many things, including St John's Ambulance Brigade's rather odd sort of new guidance that they've issued. We'll come back to that in a minute, because the King was out and about yesterday, and he was refreshing his first aid skills. Here he is practising resuscitation.
We don't need to do a shot. Back on the chest. Into your compression. Yeah, off you go. Lovely. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 27, 28.
A round of applause for the King. I don't know if that was a person with breasts or not. I couldn't really tell. That's apparently what you're supposed to call a woman now if you're in the St John's Ambulance Brigade. I mean, for heaven's sake, that is certainly not common sense to me. Let's talk to Esther McVey, former Minister for Common Sense. Esther, very good morning to you.
Morning.
That's one of the more obscure pieces of footage I've ever seen of King Charles. I wasn't really expecting that, but it's quite entertaining.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Should I have collapsed and then you ended up having Prince Charles giving you mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, it would certainly shock me back to life.
Yeah, I think it probably would shock most people back to life. Let's talk about what's going on right now, because a very weird Tory policy has emerged this morning about immigration. And this is, I was speaking earlier on to the Shadow Business Secretary, and she was telling me that Kemi Badenoch's got this idea of somehow giving student loan type sort of, conditions, if you like, to people seeking asylum in this country, so that if they become successful and they get asylum, they'd have to pay back the money that was spent on them staying in hotels or living in sort of, sheltered accommodation or whatever. I mean, it seems a bit mad, doesn't it?
I think what Kemi's doing, in all honesty, is saying, how do we stop any of the pull factors that are bringing people to the shores? So yes, we know we've got to stop the illegal immigrants. We would have the Rwanda scheme, and I'd still bring back the Rwanda scheme or replace a third country you could send them to. So this is another way in saying, if you do come here, it's not going to be the free ride you thought it was. You're going to have to pay back your housing costs. However, we can all see there's going to be a whole host of problems with this. And the only way I think you could get it through the courts, get it through and working, is you're going to have to come out of the European Convention on Human Rights. You're going to come out of the Human Rights Act. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And then you've got to ask the questions, well, what if people don't pay? How do you force them to pay? Right. Does this become a criminal act in themselves and they're a criminal? So I can see a whole host of things that have got to be worked through. But do I agree with the underlying fact that you've got to stop all pull factors? Any reason for people wanting to come to this country? Yes.
Right. Because the other thing that I mentioned, as it were, to Harriet, was that, you know, also what we should surely be doing is granting fewer applications, because, you know, we allow far more as a percentage asylum seekers to be successful in claiming asylum here than every other country in Europe.
Well, look, we're singing off the same hymn sheet here. I am very strict on this. I would be doing everything I could to be stopping it. Like I said, I'd definitely have the third country you'd be sending them to. I'd be making sure, as you say, they didn't come across in the first instance. You'd be doing all of their processing offshore. You'd be doing as much as you could. But look, send out all signals that they can't come here, the country can't afford it, there isn't the housing either to accommodate them, but if you do, you'll get a bill that goes with it. I think the other thing where they talked about the spouses and what we're going to do to limit spouses coming in, I think, you know, absolutely, yes, we're going to have to do that. But again, I think there will be constraints with human rights again, right to family life. But what you did see that Rishi did in 2024, where he stopped sort of spouses and dependents with students, I think when you see the next set of figures come through for immigration, you'll see them down considerably because you stop the spouses. So absolutely, any dependents, we can't have them.
No, exactly right. Because, I mean, I'm just looking at the story this morning of that guy who came into the country last Thursday, Abu Wadi from Gaza City, who was staying at an asylum hotel in Manchester when he was arrested on Sunday night after the Mail on Sunday exposed the fact that he'd come to this country. Apparently he paid 1,300 quid to get here. There's pictures of him now launching a device at Israeli troops when he was in Palestine. You know, he's a known jihadist. He wants death to all Jews. How on earth he got through the sort of the cordon of supposed border force security at Dover is anybody's guess, because if he can do it, I mean, how many other people like him can do it and that we don't know about?
This is the most egregious case that I've seen. And in a way, to use a colloquial phrase, it's like he's taking the mickey out of us all, isn't it? Filming it, coming over, cheering what he could do. This guy needs to be sent back ASAP. I know he'll say, oh, you know, my life would be at danger if he sent us back to Gaza. Well, do you know what? You're putting people in the UK's life at danger. I don't really care. You need to be sent back to where you've come, because the message he is sending out to other wannabe trouble causers is outrageous, and we need to get rid of him. But again, this is building up case by case the real reason we need to come out of the European Court of Human Rights. We keep saying it, don't we? This is another reason, this is another reason. And if this doesn't make you realise you've got to come out of that in the Human Rights Act, I don't know what will. I know, exactly. And I mean, a lot of people have said to me they don't really have any faith in the system that will deport him either. That it's all very well that he's been rounded up, and it's all very well that the authorities seem to have at least found him and not let him wander the streets aimlessly, you know, doing harm to people, or particularly to Jewish people. But, you know, they have no faith left in a system which will deport him, because he'll find himself some kind of human rights lawyer who will come up with some reason why he can't go back to Gaza. Look, I think there's the whole cycle here, isn't it? It's the fact that he's managed to travel through so many other countries that he would have been safe in, but he had to come all the way here. So every stage, you know, you've got to stop it. When he is here, there needs to be no ways about it, no two ways about it. He is sent back straight away. And what we don't need to see him do is come back again on this never-ending runabout with the UK system. We have got to get strict and smart, and I'm afraid these do-gooders, these lefty lawyers who want to take the cases to keep them in the country, we've got to say no. We've got to stop the number of appeals again.
Yeah,
come
exactly.
Out of the
well, because apparently, I mean, all those countries that he came through, as you say, Germany, France, etc., he actually worked in them, apparently, to save up the money to come on the boat to get here. So not only was it completely and utterly safe, but he was able to make a living there.
Yeah, you could not make it up. But like I said, the fact that he's filmed it, he is now taking, as I said, the mick out of all of us in the UK and our legal system. And I'm afraid he needs to be deported immediately.
Absolutely right. One question for you about this councillor who's on the front page of The Sun this morning, Sam Gould, ghastly individual, 33 years of age. He was a Health Secretary aide to Wes Streeting's office, and obviously, you know, you can't really blame Wes Streeting for this guy's existence, but you'd think they might have known a bit more about him before they gave him the job. But I was staggered to see that after having been found guilty of indecent exposure, flashing at a 13-year-old girl, the Sun this morning talking to her parents, she's now scared to go outside. He followed her down the street. Apparently, there's no mechanism by which to stop him from being a councillor continually in Redbridge, which seems extraordinary to me.
Well, look, this is, I mean, I know I've seen it there on the front page of The Sun. If it all proves to be correct, everything The Sun's got there, but you say parents coming forward now, this is outrageous. I mean, this proves that he's a danger to society. He can't be representing society if he's proved to be a danger to one of his constituents. So there will have to be, as we say, a mechanism to remove him, whether it's a sort of a recall that MPs have or just the Labour Party putting pressure on him to stand down, remove the whip, as it were, and force him to stand down. But this is outrageous. It's like Labour representatives are falling one by one. In my neck of the woods, it was Mike Amesbury, where he punched a constituent. This one's chasing a 13-year-old constituent up the road. We've got others in Cabinet changing the CV. It's outrageous. You're right, they do need better checks.
Yeah, well, absolutely right. And let's just talk briefly about the state of the economy, because April is coming, looming large. It's only about 3 weeks away, pretty much. And a lot of businesses, and I was speaking to a driver this morning, a lot of businesses are basically pulling back on their national insurance contributions. A lot of them putting people on 0 hours contracts to get around the pay rise that they should be giving to the government. So it may well be that actually Rachel Reeves's plan, the grand plan to collect a load of money from national insurance, is going to backfire, like all the other plans. We just spoke to a mother just before the news there who was talking about her trying to find a school place for her son where she lives in the southeast, because yet another, I think, 26 private schools have closed as a result of this VAT imposition, and a lot of parents just can't find any places anywhere near where they live for their kids to go to school.
I think this notion that Labour has, that people have limitless amounts of money, particularly people they don't like. So if it's you're going to a private school, well, if you can afford that, you can afford a 20% increase. Well, actually, no, they can't. That's something who are putting all their money aside to get the kids through a school there. But the businesses, I cannot tell you, Mike, how many businesses are getting in touch with me saying, we cannot afford. And the amount of money that the employer's NIC has gone up by is considerable, but it's overlaid with a whole host of other things like minimum wage going up, rights from day one for workers, business rate relief disappearing. There's a whole host of inflationary pressures, costs going up. And they say, we cannot afford it. So you're right, they're taking different routes out of having to pay that bill. So we're already hearing that people are going to be going self-employed when really they're a member of staff. Because people are going to say, well, how is the business going to survive? Are we going to close it? Are we going to cut back? Or are we going to find routes by which we don't pay that additional tax that the Labour Party is imposing on us? But I have to tell you, people did tell Labour this. Bodies did, CBI, IOD, you name it. People went to Labour and said, this won't work. And lots of family businesses, with the added now getting rid of the business property relief, they're saying, do you know what? You're going to kill off so many family businesses. Unbelievable.
Yeah. It really is unbelievable. Esther, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Esther McVeigh, former Minister for Common Sense, of course, still a Tory MP. Let's get a voice note from Darren, who's got a lighter look at two-tier justice.
Good morning, Mike. It's Darren here from Carmarthen. Hope you're well. Unfortunately, Mike, I'm the bearer of some bad news this morning. Believe it or not, Mike, I've actually been convicted of murder this week. But the good news is, the silver lining here, Mike, is when I stood up in court, I actually identified as a transgender, ethnic minority from Albania, legal immigrant, Muslim, that also identifies on the weekend as a turkey, Mike. So luckily the judge saw all that and took all that into account as per the guidance, and I've been given a 2-month community service order, Mike. So I got to pick up some litter in my local community. So it's not a bad result.
Well done, Darren. You don't even need a good lawyer, really, do you? You just need to have a bit of imagination and a bit of common sense. Two-tier justice, indeed. Here's one from Stuart in Perthshire. Mike, he says, I can't believe what's happening to this country. We have civil servants who refuse to carry out government orders and threaten to strike if they're forced to, and a judiciary that decides to do what it likes and ignore those who are meant to be the actual lawmakers. How much longer is the tail going to be wagging the dog? It's a good point. You might remember, actually, talking of tails and dogs, there's a massive problem in Birmingham with rats, and there's an update on that story today, which we'll bring you shortly. Basically, it looks as though the bin men in Birmingham have just basically gone out on a permanent strike with no date set for when they're going to return, on the basis that there's so many rats running around they don't feel safe. So they've been sort of cowed into not doing their jobs because of some rats. Extraordinary. This one from somebody who doesn't give a name, unfortunately, about the bumper sticker business. This, of course, is the home of common sense. Here's the bumper sticker. If you want to get your hands on one, there's only one way to do it now. You've got to send in your name and address to talk.tv/sticker. OK, just make sure you take a photo of it on your vehicle, post a picture on social media, tag us at talkTV, and my own personal Twitter as well, at IROMG. Spread the word. Got this, though, from somebody not too happy. It says, morning, I was just about to attach my bumper sticker to my truck, but I heard that your bosses have got involved, saying the stickers can't be attached to fridges. So in solidarity with your listeners who can't get out and don't like being told what to do, my sticker is going on my fridge inside my truck. Another great idea, ruined by management. Well, listen, I think you're slightly taking offence at the wrong point here. At the end of the day, you have got a moving fridge. You're fortunate in that way. But it would be better if it's on the outside of the truck. And we're not telling people what to do. We're just saying the point of a bumper sticker is to put it on your bumper. That's all. I mean, if you wish to stick it on the back of your jacket, I suppose you can do that. But as I say, sometimes the bosses here get a bit shirty, as it were, about stuff like that. So I'm just passing on the message. You know, you do what you like with it. All I'm telling you is that there's a shortage of them, and you'll be depriving somebody else who might want to put one on their car if you don't want to do that. What is the point of a justice minister who has no power to do the job, says Bernie? Well, you might as well ask, what's the point of this entire Labour government, who don't seem capable of doing anything at all? 8:20.
Is this kind of the most likely way we are going to see any peace being actually agreed?
Well, in one sense, this is a very proper first step.
because the Americans' role is supposed to be to mediate between Ukraine and Russia to see if a ceasefire can be agreed. Now, they say what the purpose of today's meeting is to find out from the Ukrainians what is their bottom line, what are the points they are prepared to concede in the course of a negotiation.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 24 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course. Let's get a new voice note from Scott.
Hi Mike, Scott from Leicester. Just talking about the defendants, these horrible, vile human beings, if you can call them that, not facing the victims when going up for sentencing. It's virtually impossible to enforce the fact because they're just going to be disruptive, may even say horrible, vile, nasty things for the people they are. Now, I think what you should do is tell them, if they don't, for the first 5 years of the sentence, they'll get no TV, no games consoles, no weekly or monthly allowance for spending on crisps, chocolate, milk, cereal, and that's the only perks you get. And in a place like that, you need it to trade.
Yeah, I think you've got to do something, though, haven't you, Scott? Because at the end of the day, maybe your system would work well. I mean, I'm tempted to say just, gag them, and that way they can't make any noise at all. I suppose you might hear something, or put a crash helmet on them, I don't know, and pipe it in that way. I just, there has to be a way to make them sit and take account of what they've done, and to face the music in the way that justice was meant to be seen to be done, as well as being done. Seems to me that there must be a way. Morning, Mike, says Maggie. Yes, I'm happy that the terrorist has been arrested, but how many more are here under the radar? And what did Esther's party, the Tories, do to stop the boats when they were in power? Good question. Pam says, if private schools are closing because of the VAT, surely if the councils cannot provide school places, they should take them over, including the teachers. But they haven't got the money. That is the problem, isn't it? One from Neil in Surrey says, Mike, I was very impressed by King Charles practising his CPR skills. When I was last refreshing my CPR training, they reminded me to sing along to Staying Alive from Saturday Night Fever to keep the correct rhythm. One of Charles's playlists, I wonder. Perfectly executed chest compressions. Well done, King Charles, says Neil. Yeah, absolutely right. And a couple of people picked up on the fact that Esther McVeigh sounded like she was saying scousers, but was actually saying spouses. One from Stephen Stoke says, Esther is dreaming if she thinks she can get rid of scousers, mate. There's thousands of them around here. Calm down. Calm down. He's in Stoke, by the way. Why are there so many scousers in Stoke? Anyway, we'll come back to that. Let's talk to Ross Clark, columnist at The Sun today. He's written about the welfare bill. If you're not looking for work and you can work, your benefits should be cut. End of, says Ross. Very good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Mike.
I think the world will agree with you on this one because I think people are sick to death of the numbers of people who are now currently not working, who obviously could. We know there's a huge tranche of young people who are not even looking for work.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary rise in the number of people on out-of-work benefits. It was like 3.6 million in 2017. It's now 5.95 million. Right. Got a 65% rise. And all that began before COVID, by the way. And it sort of coincided with people being switched onto universal credit, and which, was supposed to achieve the opposite, was supposed to make work pay.
Yes.
And then come COVID, of course, what happened was that all the work capability assessments by which people are, they're the name is self-explanatory, isn't it? That they went online for the duration of the lockdowns and so, which obviously you understand. But then come the end of the pandemic, they've continued to be held online and by telephone. And there's only 10% of these work capability assessments are now actually held face to face. And so we got these hundreds of thousands of people being shunted on to out-of-work benefits, often with no requirement for them to look for any work on the grounds that they're too sick to work.
Right.
And they're never even seen by a doctor, assessed by an official or anything.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I've spoken to GPs who freely admit that they send out emails to people for purposes of taking days off work without even seeing them. They just ring up and say, we'll send them an email and say, I'm not feeling very well, and they just sign them off for 5 days.
Well, yes, it becomes the easiest option for a GP to do that, doesn't it? Get rid of a troublesome patient who might actually come in the next week and make a fuss if the doctor fails to sign them off. I mean, those sort of things should be done by doctors who are not the person's usual GP. So, but Keir Starmer has now said, he's promised to tackle this welfare dependency. Rachel Reeves and Liz Kendall, the Work and Pensions Secretary, have made similar noises in recent weeks. We're being sort of invited to believe that in the spring statement in a couple of weeks' time, there will be measures to trim the welfare budget. But the trouble is that, for 14 years, Labour people, including Keir Starmer and everybody, shouted austerity whenever the Tories tried to cut a bean from the benefits bill. And does anyone really believe that they will now tackle the welfare problem properly?
Well, exactly right. And also Robert Jenrick's in the papers this morning saying basically that they will be running into trouble from their own making of their own economy as well, because with the new national insurance increases coming in April, more companies will be laying people off. More companies will be going to say people that work part-time, we don't really want you working part-time anymore, so we're going to let you go. They're going to avoid paying the money, and they're going to be putting more people on the dole. And with the same hand, the Labour government are saying we're going to sack thousands of civil servants in Operation Chainsaw, which they've rather unusually called it. So it's kind of like they don't quite know what they're doing with either hand, do they?
No, and of course the other factor is this employment rights bill, which is going to make it very much less attractive to employ people. On one hand, they say they want to offload civil servants, but on the other hand, they're sort of going to strengthen these employment tribunals and so on, which is going to sort of embolden all the unions and make it far more difficult to trim jobs.
Yes, absolutely right. And of course, the problem when you have this many people and this big of a system, as they found out in America with Donald Trump's rather amusing inauguration speech, where he said that there are people who are supposedly 200 years old still in receipt of their sort of benefit money, and we'll probably have the same problem here. There'll be thousands and thousands of people who don't even live anymore who are still getting paid somehow.
Well, yes, and we don't really know the extent of benefits fraud, but here's a clue. Back in the 1990s, John Major's government started a trial of a scheme where people were going to be forced to accept work placements to get any money. If they didn't turn up for the work placement, they didn't get any money. And there were 2 trials, one in Kent, one up in Humberside. And do you know what? Nearly half the people on this trial just stopped claiming benefits.
Yeah.
You think why? Well, probably because they were claiming them fraudulently. They were working. Some of these people probably didn't even live in the country or didn't even exist. I mean, it exposed a sort of massive scam. But you think, well, why has no government repeated that experiment in the years since? I mean, just rather than hand money out to people who never have to even present themselves to a benefits office or something.
Right.
You put people on compulsory work placements, make them actually turn up and then pay them. And if they don't turn up, you don't pay them. And that, if we did that, we would trim the welfare bill massively, to judge by that 1990s experiment.
Well, you would think, wouldn't you? And there are seemingly ways of doing it, but whether or not they've got the nous or the wherewithal to make it happen remains to be seen. My confidence level is not high, I'm afraid, on this one. Ross, thanks very much indeed. Ross Clark, columnist at The Sun. Let's get a voice note from Dan.
Morning, Mike. Dan from Norfolk here. Now, due to poor dietary choices, I tend to be a bit of a man with breasts. I'm just wondering if the St George's ambulance are now going to treat me like a woman. Anyway, enjoy the show. Bye.
Well, they might treat you as a person with breasts, I suppose, but according to them, that wouldn't necessarily make you a woman. I don't know. It's all very complicated, isn't it? Lisa says this. I think it stinks that Rupert Lowe is now saying he wants to join the Tories. What a stitch-up. I know you won't read this out, though, Mike, as you seem to be very anti-reform. I don't blame him for not coming on your show. I don't know where you get I'm anti-reform from. You know, I've never been anti-reform at all. In fact, this is probably one of the first shows that reform ever came on in the history of reform. You know, we used to have people on from the Brexit Party as well. We used to have people on from Brussels when they were in the European Union, when they were in the European Parliament. You know, so I don't quite know where you get the fact that I'm anti-reform. I'm not anti-reform, and it's not that they won't come on the show either. I mean, you know, we had Richard Tice in here a few days ago. But since this has all broken out and since this has all started, they haven't been quite so, shall we say, keen to talk about it. Morning, Mike, says Chris. I like Esther McVey, but they had 14 years to stop all that she was talking about and did nothing but increase them. So as most won't vote for them, we got 4 years to get another party for the people as I'm leaving reform. Farage is just like the rest, a liberal lefty. I'm not sure that's fair either. But there is a certain amount of resentment going on around on both social media and on the messages that we're getting here about the way that reform is going currently. And I'm simply reporting that. That's all I'm doing. And if you want to take a view and give it to me, I'll be more than happy to entertain it. Richard in the Costa del Sol says, these migrants that get to stay aren't going to get jobs. They will be living off the state. That's me and you funding it. I know. That is the problem, isn't it? Absolutely outrageous. 0344 499 1000. We're going to be taking you down another lane in a moment. And we're going to talk about Angela Rayner's planning reforms, which are all going to be coming out this week. Supposedly more houses made of wood and, of course, 1.5 million of them. Now, nobody really believes she's going to build 1.5 million homes, and nobody really believes that the project will be getting underway anytime soon. But we'll find out what Nathan Emerson thinks. He's a housing commentator. This is Talk.
Across the UK on DAB+, On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:37. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through. Of course, if you want to get in touch with us, you can send us a tweet at talkTV. You can send us a text at 87222. Start your message with the word talk, and then you can send us a voice note to 0344 499 1000. You can do that via WhatsApp, of course. Next stop, Hoyle, says Marco. Just stop Hoyle, he should say. Marco in Swindon. Has the sponger of the house not heard of teletext holidays? I once went to Mexico for 800 quid with my money that I earned, may I add. Stories like this really don't restore any faith in the public, and the divide between the electorate and the politician grows ever more. Well, at least the one thing that old Lindsay Hall has done is that he's accepted that he may have made one or two errors in recording his trips around the world that he was having so much fun with, and so he's now correcting that record. And it may well be that given the furore that's been kicked up by his travels, that he may not be quite so quick to head off with the wife down to Gibraltar or Qatar or Brazil or Los Angeles. Morning, Mike. Where I live in the city of London, we have some parking for where we live in the road, but we've lost 4 parking bays for Lime bike areas. No one was asked about this. It just happened, says Gordon. And this is off the back of a story we're doing this morning about Cambridge South Station up there in Cambridge on the outskirts of the city, where they've built a railway station, but they haven't built a car park on it. So if you want to go there by car, there's nowhere for you to leave your car apart from in the road. So you know what's going to happen next. They'll probably start putting double yellow lines down, and then everybody will start getting tickets. Maybe Cambridge South Station will be changing its name to Carnbridge South Station. Great show, says David. Thank you very much indeed. And one from Helen who says, Mike, Harriet Baldwin, she was the shadow minister for business, seems a very nice lady, but I'll never vote Tory because they got us into this migrant mess. And I think a lot of people would say they feel the same way. Should we check in with King Charles, who last time we had a look was resuscitating a dummy? Talk over it. And here he goes. 1, 2, staying alive is apparently the correct sort of rhythm you should be getting into. Staying alive. It works, actually, doesn't it? That's when you do it. Well, there we are. King Charles gets a round of applause for resuscitating a dummy. This is where we've got to in the world, I'm afraid. Coming up, we're going to speak to Nathan Emerson, housing commentator and CEO of Property Mark. Have a look at this. Tony says, America has zero leverage against Russia. Tariffs won't work as Russia doesn't trade with America or use the US dollar. Russia is winning all across the front lines and Kursk. Well, I mean, this is the news on the front pages this morning, that basically a peace deal has been signed, or at least has been given to Ukraine, and it's now basically, according to Marco Rubio, in the hands of the Russians as to what they do. Putin has been told to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine, according to the front page of the Daily Telegraph. So we'll see how that goes. Let's have a look at Donald Trump, though, yesterday as well, because he was out and about outside the White House looking at Teslas, because, of course, Elon Musk is kind of, I wouldn't say right-hand man, but one of his very close advisors in the cabinet, was showing him around his latest line of cars.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer. It's just a brake.
Yeah, it's just a brake and an accelerator.
I don't want to.
You give Secret Service a heart attack.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. There's no gears.
This is really amazing. It's really amazing. Let's take a look at a couple of these. Think Biden could get into that car? I don't think so.
The 47th President of the United States walking around these cars like he's in a car showroom. Quite interesting, really. A bit of breaking news for you. This is coming in from Cheltenham. Talk Sport down there, of course, mob-handed. There's lots of people down there for that. Apparently snow is falling currently at Cheltenham. -1 degree is the chill sweeping across the UK, with more warnings for frost and ice. I must admit, I was pretty cold yesterday. As I say, I've got one heavy coat that I wear if it's really cold, and I've got a raincoat that I wear if it's not. And I thought it was one of those not particularly cold days, and I wore the raincoat, and it was absolutely freezing. Freezing it was. I was down in Westminster. Kevin's in Kent. Let's have a word with him. Kevin, very good morning to you.
Hello.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
Hello, Mike.
Yeah, what can I do for you, sir?
I was just listening to your Tory politician this morning, going on about the migrants paying back their accommodation.
Yes.
And I thought, that chance of that happening.
It doesn't sound like the greatest idea, does it?
No, it doesn't, to be honest.
No, because I think surely most people, I don't know if you're one of them, would rather see the back of the economic migrants, would rather see them being deported rather than seeing them actually being given asylum.
I think you're right, Mike, but again, I mean, can you imagine if you said to a migrant, right, okay, you've got to pay this debt back, they go straight into the black economy, you wouldn't see them for dust.
Right.
And you've got no chance of getting the money back.
No, I totally agree with that, Kevin. Thanks for your call. Yeah, this is a new Tory policy. Kemi Badenoch came up with it, apparently. She thinks that it's a good idea to get a student loan-style system in place so that if somebody comes here to seek asylum, if they get granted asylum, they will then be asked to pay back the money that was spent on them, living in migrant hotels and the like, and probably whether they would have been put up in some kind of temporary accommodation. I mean, one, you don't know how you're going to really sort of sum all that money up, do you? Because if you come in illegally and you stay in, say, a hotel for 5 years, how much money is that actually going to be? You know, you're going to be telling them you have to pay you back like 20,000 quid, which they don't have. Are they going to rob people? You know, it's just the whole thing seems incredibly badly thought through. Les from Ilkeston in Derbyshire wants to talk about Carl Clifford. He says, just listening to that bloke who was a barrister talking about why it was difficult to bring Carl Clifford into court for sentencing. Every excuse in the book he demonstrated. In cases like this, the guilty person should be dragged by their hair into court. I'm sorry, but how difficult are the logistics of achieving this? And if the charges were to start kicking off in court, swearing, being disrespectful and so on, they could be quickly taken back down to the cells. Assailants of this magnitude need to be in court to meet their fate and let families like the poor soul who lost his wife and 2 daughters look these disgusting killers in the eye. I think you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head. Loads of people have got in touch on this story because they want to see justice done. You have to see it done, not just to have it done. And I think that's a big factor. Chris is in Epsom. Hello, Chris.
Yeah, morning, mate.
Morning, sir. What can I do for you?
Well, Trump's removed the tariffs on Canada overnight.
Yeah.
But all this, I think Trump's got it right. I mean, the American steel furnaces shut down because they couldn't. They were trying to produce the steel in an environmentally friendly best way.
Right.
Using best practices. China produces the steel using coal, right? And in the worst practices, and then dumps it on America cheaply.
Right.
And he's lost tens of thousands of jobs in the steel industry. So now the American steel industry's got a chance of getting going again.
Yes.
Also with the American car manufacturers. I mean, they all moved their production plants south of the border.
Yeah.
They then used cheap Chinese steel, made the cars, then took them back into America and sold them to Americans.
Right.
And on top of that, he's got $350 billion trade deficit with the EU, which also does not affect us. Don't forget, the one thing that, and Theo mentioned it earlier, we got Brexit.
Yeah.
Right? We ain't going to get tariffs.
Exactly right. Well, this is the thing. I mean, I listen to people who are anti-tariffs, and some of them are on the right of the political divide because they're libertarians. They don't think we should ever have anything other than free trade. But I say, if you've got cheap goods coming in because of the fact that China's making them cheap because they can, then I don't see any reason why you wouldn't put tariffs on them.
Well, you have to. I mean, look at the net zero nonsense, right?
Yeah.
We've exported all, including our steel, and they're making solar panels and those bloody wind turbines, right? Which are no good when the wind doesn't blow.
Right.
And when it blows too hard, they have to turn them off.
Yeah.
And then we have to pay a subsidy to the what was it,
180,000 an hour we're paying for that.
Yeah. No, it was
ridiculous.
12 million quid so far we paid for turning them off. I mean, it's ludicrous.
Yes.
It's because we haven't got one decent business person on the front bench of the government.
Yeah. No, it's incredible.
Lunatics.
It's absolutely incredible, isn't it? And you know what else they're doing in this country? They've closed down the blast furnaces up north. I think it was in Sheffield, and they've done it the same in Swansea. And they're supposedly going to recreate those blast furnaces with electric furnaces, which are not as efficient and not as good, but they're greener.
it gets better than that, right? They are not going to be ready, right, for 9 years.
Blimey.
But the National Grid has already said it can't supply the electricity to power them.
Of course they can't. Of course they can't.
Too much.
It's a joke, isn't it?
It's the same. You know, they want to build houses, right? Yeah. I'm not going to mention the name of the company because it wouldn't be fair.
All right.
But a large company, right, an international, a multinational, bought a plot of land next to its existing building to build another data centre, right?
Right.
And and this is for a normal data centre. This isn't for AI, which requires something like 40 times the power of a normal data centre. Yeah. And they said, "Oh no, you can't build that. We can't give you the power." We in this country now, all right. When you build something or you go for planning permission, you have to go to the National Grid and say what energy you're going to need for your development. Right. Now, you have to have a 20% increase. So if you want 30 gigapower or 30 megawatt, all right, you have to ask for 36. Right. Now, if everybody that's got an agreement with the grid went to draw their electricity, we're at 120% of power capability already.
Yeah. So this all falls over, doesn't it?
All falls over.
Yeah.
Even the guy that was one of the guys that designed the National Grid said 15 years ago that the grid was creaking and couldn't withstand the. You think of the stuff that you've got plugged in at home now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's got multi-plugs in the wall. You've got your phone, your laptop.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything. All right. And the grid can't cope.
No, it's absolutely clear, very clear indeed, and it's going to get worse. The more that they try and move towards net zero, the more electricity they need. It's absolutely bonkers. Chris, good call. Thank you very much indeed. Chris in Epsom there making some points about the uselessness of the net zero campaigners and precisely why they're losing out at every single turn to the people who are using fossil fuels and the Americans and the Chinese who have not now gone down that road. They just haven't. Let's get a voice note from Kelvin.
Morning, Mike. On the subject of the sick and disabled being forced into work, what I want to know is if they get injured when they're in work because of their illness or the sickness. I mean, I suffered degenerative spine disease, arthritis, caused through an accident when I was working. I'm 63 now, and I suffered a prolapse disc, 4 lots of nerve damage, couldn't walk. It took me months and months to get myself back on my feet. The NHS didn't do anything for me, and you know, I just want to know who's going to be responsible if we get injured to get at work because of what we got wrong with us. Will it be the employer? Will it be us? Or will it be the DWP? But I can't see it being the DWP. They'll wash their hands of it, won't they? Go, oh no, it's nothing to do with us. Yet they're the ones saying you're fit for work.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one, Kelvin. We'll probably try and get an answer to it when we get somebody on next time who can talk about it. 0344 499 1000. We go to Ukraine coming next. We'll find out what's going on. This is Talk.
I'm more of the view that actually there were political tensions between the two men. They had a different view about where the party should go. Rupert Lowe, I think, was becoming quite impatient about some of the points that he was making. And Nigel Farage decided this was not a tension that he would tolerate. And I think these allegations of misbehaviour were more of a cover for something that he wanted to do anyway.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. It's coming up to 6 minutes to 9. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here, of course, at 10. This from Jeff in Sussex. Regarding King Charles resuscitating a dummy, can he try his hand on two-tier Keir? Yeah, well, I mean, you say two-tier Keir's a bit of a dummy. This is what he's just put out on his social media account on Twitter, right? He says this: for too long, the Tories hid behind regulators, deferring decisions and letting them block economic growth. And you paid the price for this stagnation. I won't stand for it. My government is cutting unnecessary regulation to boost growth and put more money in your pocket. I mean, what's he talking about? He's not putting more money in anybody's pocket. Well, water prices are going up, so the water utility regulators are not doing their job. Electricity prices have gone through the roof, so their regulation isn't working either. You've got the train regulators, who don't seem to be doing very much for the actual consumers of the train services. You've got any number of other regulators who don't do what they say on the tin, and they seem to prefer working for the producers of whatever it is they're supposed to be protecting than the consumers of it. We get stopped either way. And it's certainly not getting any more money in our pockets. As far as I can see, all that Labour's doing is taking more money out of our pockets, for heaven's sake. Bit of breaking news for you, though. The captain of the So Long container ship involved in the North Sea crash is a Russian national. According to the company. The vessel's owner has said the rest of the crew were Russian and Filipino nationals, according to the shipping company Ernst Russ. The man who has been arrested on suspicion of gross negligence and manslaughter in connection with Monday's collision, of course, as well. We'll keep you updated on all of that. But the plot thickens with that story because nobody really can explain how one massive container ship could go pretty much in a straight line right into another ship which was anchored, which wasn't moving. You know, seems bizarre. 0344 499 1000. Let's talk to Alexei Goncharenko, who's a Ukrainian MP. The news this morning on the front page is, of course, very much about a peace proposition. Putin told to agree to a Ukraine ceasefire. It says on the front page of the Telegraph. It says on the front page of the Times, Kyiv is open to a ceasefire as Trump restarts aid. So the aid is back. The intelligence sharing is also back. Let's find out what Alexei makes of it all. Alexei, very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. We're told as well that Donald Trump has re-extended a second invitation to Volodymyr Zelensky to go to the White House. Obviously, the ball, as Marco Rubio says, is now in Russia's court. What do you think they're going to do?
I think yesterday was a very good day, and one person who was very unhappy yesterday was Putin, because now American military support to Ukraine is restarted. It's already physically moving. The intelligence sharing is happening, and this is super important for us. And yes, Ukraine needs peace, not a surrender, but a peace, and we need it as soon as possible. And that is very good that yesterday Ukraine showed it to the whole world, and now it's turn of Putin. I hope he will, well, I don't hope, I mean, Russia doesn't want any peace. And I think now Putin will show his true face. And after this, I think President Trump will put pressure on Russia. That will be the interesting moment. So I hope he will be successful.
Yes, I think we all do. Do you think the difference between a surrender and a peace is how much land, if any, is given up?
No, it's not. This difference between surrender and peace is next. First, we will not give up any piece of the land, any inch, meaning that we will never recognize this territory as Russian. And even, yes, Russia, after end of hostilities, if it will go this way, Russia will still control part of Ukrainian territories, but we will never recognize them as Russians. So even if territorial integrity is violated de facto, de jure it should be secured. Second thing is sovereignty, meaning that Ukraine is a sovereign state, making its own choices where to move, what army to have, what military production to develop. And three is security guarantees, mostly from Europeans, British, but I hope with at least some American participation. Yes. So that's our red lines. With these red lines, it will be a peace, not a surrender. Without these red lines, we will not accept this. That's the story.
Okay, that seems pretty straightforward and pretty clear. Alexei, thank you very much indeed. Alexei Goncharenko, the Ukrainian MP, saying there is a big difference between a surrender and, of course, a peace deal, and they will not give up willingly, certainly, any land whatsoever to the Russians. Alan in Middlesbrough says, afternoon, watching King Charles doing some CPR, it took me back to my childhood when my mother used to sing Elton John and Kiki D's hit, Don't Go Breaking My Heart. Is that the one that you use for the same purposes, for the rhythm? I don't know. And one from somebody who doesn't give a name. Here we go, Mike. Another perfectly good car park being ruined for 700 bikes in Richmond. Is that what's going on in Richmond? I mean, I know that it's certainly happening to a lot of underground stations around London, and maybe some overground ones as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Trish says this, Mike, what's the bet they won't be cutting the benefits of the people that can't speak English? Well, that's probably right. Coming up, Dan Hodges is going to join us. We'll find out what he makes of what's been going on in the big wide world. You know I got it right again, Dan. See you in a minute.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 9. We are, of course, into Wednesday the 12th of March, right here on Talk. We're with you all the way through the day, all the way through Prime Minister's questions, all the way through to the evening. Kevin O'Sullivan, of course, in from 7. Jeremy Carlin from 4. Ian Collins from 1. Julie Hartley-Brewer from 10. We've been talking about a great many things this morning, from Ukraine to Cambridge and a new railway station which has been built without a car park, believe it or not. You're supposed to go by bike, apparently, everywhere, and otherwise they don't want to know you. Let's have a voice note from what you've been saying this morning.
Hi Mike, great show. Always enjoy listening to it first thing in the morning, sets me up.
Morning Mike, Jackie from Manchester here.
Hi Mike, Richard from Telford.
Hi Mike, Darren from Suffolk, great show.
Hi Mike.
Lee from Rugby, great show as ever.
Morning Mike, Andrew in Portsmouth. I'm loving your greatest hits this morning.
Yeah, greatest hits. Project Chainsaw. This is the Labour government's attempt to get rid of thousands of people from the civil service, presumably putting them on the dole. We're going to be finding in April that an awful lot of companies are putting a lot of people on the dole because national insurance costs are rising. Many companies have now said they're going to go to zero-hour contracts with some of their people because it's simply too expensive to pay all of the national insurance that the government is now demanding. We heard from a parent earlier on in the show as well about how it's so difficult now for so many parents in the southeast of England in particular to put their children into state schools, having pulled them out of private schools, so they can't afford to keep them there because of the VAT that's been added on. We've got a tax on jobs, of course, coming down the pipe as well. We've got the Metropolitan Police investigating Rupert Lowe's threats. We've got Rupert Lowe still making a lot of noise on Twitter about how he's been betrayed by his friends in Reform. Nigel Farage hasn't really said much. We've invited both of them on. We haven't heard yet which one of them will come on first, but we hope to bring you news on that over the course of the next few days. Lindsay Hoyle still very much in the news for his freebies. And the Birmingham bin men are now on permanent strike because of those rats roaming the streets. Huge, the size of cats apparently. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call us on. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Gary says this, Mike, the ongoing debacle over Rupert Lowe is obviously having a detrimental effect to the Reform cause. I checked the ticker and it has lost around 300 members overnight. Farage needs to stop all this nonsense, get round the table with Rupert and sort this out like gentlemen. It is the only way. Well, as I said, an awful lot of people yesterday were ringing the show to say that they thought Nigel Farage should actually resign as leader of Reform, which was quite an extraordinary development, I thought. Let's talk to Dan Hodges, who's here from The Mail on Sunday. Dan, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, we have much to discuss, don't we? Because I don't want to kick off with Reform, but we will get to it. Let's talk about Trump, first of all, because it does look as though things are starting to move, things are starting to happen. I did say to you last time we spoke, let's wait and see how it all goes. The ball, according to Marco Rubio, is now in Vladimir Putin's court. We've just heard from a Ukrainian MP there to say that, we're still not going to surrender any land. But, it appears something's coming together, isn't it?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, again, we're back to the same problem. I mean, Marco Rubio has seemed to yesterday suddenly, as you say, discover the ball was in Russia's court. But the ball's been in Russia's court ever since their tanks went rolling into Ukraine, and this is the problem we've had. You and I have talked about this for a good couple of weeks now. The whole world has seen that the entire focus of American foreign policy has been to try and bully and undermine and pressure Zelensky in Ukraine. Zelensky has been saying for weeks now, I'm prepared to talk, I'm prepared to sign the mineral deal, I'm prepared to talk. And Trump, for whatever reason, has just continued to bash them. Now, as you said, we
But not anymore, though.
Well, no, I was just about to come on to that. We finally, yesterday, started to see the first chink of light from Marco Rubio. Now, remember, this is from Marco Rubio, Little Marco, as Donald Trump used to describe him. We haven't had a
Marco is now Big Marco because he's sexual
Big
state.
Marco. Well, I think there's a dispute about that. Maybe sort of medium-sized Marco at the moment. but we haven't heard anything from Trump. We saw Trump yesterday going out and buying a Tesla. But again, Trump just cannot at the moment bring himself to put pressure on Putin. Now, Rubio himself said the ball's in Putin's court. Yeah. What's Trump said? How long has it been since Trump? Remember the tweet Trump sent? Remember the tweet? When did he send it? 4 days ago? 5 days ago? Trump, if Putin doesn't start getting his act together, I'm going to impose something. What happened about that?
Well, they had meetings in Saudi Arabia, didn't they?
Yeah, but they're having meetings. But when?
Well, you just said wait and see a minute ago, so wait and see. I mean, the fact is that, last time we spoke, Dan, you were saying that Zelensky was very much being mistreated. He's now been invited back to Washington. The military aid is back on. The intelligence sharing is back on. Basically, according to Alexei Goncharenko, who I just spoke to, he said yesterday was a very good day for Ukraine. He's a Ukrainian MP. He said now he believes that Trump will put pressure on Putin to make him come to a peace deal.
Hold on. When did Trump announce the weapon? When did the weapons stop going back to Ukraine?
The military aid is back on, according to the reports this morning.
Well, first I've heard of it.
Well, it's on the front page of the Times and it's on the front page of the Guardian.
It's what they've actually started sending the weapons back.
Yeah, they have. Aid is back on and intelligence sharing is back on. It's there for us to see.
Let's wait and see.
You can't just keep saying wait and see just because I said it 2 weeks ago to you.
But Mike, I'm sorry, Mike. You were saying to me. You literally said all the time, "We got to wait and see. We've got to wait and see for this great, this great Trump art of the deal master plan." The key thing is this: if Trump genuinely wants peace, as Trump claims that he wants, that he keeps saying, there can be no peace unless Vladimir Putin is forced to make major concessions.
Yes, which he may well do.
When are we going to see the same pressure applied to Vladimir Putin and Russia that we've seen applied to Ukraine? As I said, you said it. Rubio has said the ball is in Putin's court.
Right.
Fine. So when is
Trump
we
don't know, and we always
on him?
There may well be being pressure applied at the moment. You just don't see it. Have a listen to this. This is Donald Trump on the ceasefire.
Ukraine ceasefire just agreed to a little while ago. Now we have to go to Russia and hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road. We can get this horrible war where 2,000-3,000 soldiers a week every week. 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 sometimes. I get the reports. And they're not American soldiers. They're Ukrainian and they're Russian. But people are being killed outside of that. People are being killed in the cities as things explode throughout the cities. And we want to get that war over with. Ukraine has agreed to it, and hopefully Russia will agree to it. We're going to meet with them later on today and tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to wipe out a deal. But I think the ceasefire is very important. If we can get Russia to do it, that'll be great. If we can't, we just keep going on and people are going to get killed, lots of people.
There you go. That's what he said.
Absolutely. And literally, what did we see him say? Like Zelensky, he's a dictator, he's got to step down, he gets thrown out of the White House. With Putin, it's hopefully he'll accept. With Zelensky, if he doesn't accept...
Yeah, but you don't treat everybody the same, do you? You don't talk the same way
Thank you, Mike. Absolutely, no. That's right. And this is the problem.
But again, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what matters is the ceasefire. What matters is what actually happens when the shooting stops and the killing stops. I think everybody wants that, right? It's a question of how you approach it. It's the same as the way that you sometimes interview people. You don't always interview people the same way. Sometimes you interview some people differently to others because you want to get a decent interview out of them. Sometimes I shout at you, sometimes I don't. That's the world. That's the way the world works, isn't it? Shall I read you the first paragraph of the Guardian's front page today?
Please do. I always love the listening to the Guardian.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Guardian says Ukraine said yesterday it was ready to accept an immediate 30-day ceasefire in the war with Russia, prompted the United States to immediately lift its restrictions on military aid and intelligence sharing.
Brilliant. Let's brilliant. Let's see it. If that's what's happening. But I'm just saying.
That is what's happening.
Let's wait and see. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah. But you can't keep coming on and just saying, let's wait and see, just because I said it first. I'm telling you, you can wait and see from this side, right? But you can't wait and see.
You've nationalised wait and see.
You come up with something better than that.
Nationalised wait and see.
Let's talk about reform, because I put it to a shadow cabinet member of the Tory party today that Rupert Lowe has said that he might be interested in joining the Conservative Party, and she was a bit reticent to offer the open, warm, and loving embrace to him, I have to say. So she said, of course, we'd like to invite anybody to join us who shares our values. She didn't say what they were, and I think that's part of the problem for the Tories.
Yeah, I mean, that I cannot, I just cannot understand. I mean, look, I can understand the Tories are desperate for reform to split.
Yeah.
They're desperate for reform to fragment. They're desperate for reform to the reform threat to go away. And there are some people in the Tory party who I think are being too clever by half and think, I know what, let's play some 4D chess of our own. Let's get Rupert Lowe on board with us. A big part of there's a couple of things. Partly, it seems to me in relation to this, I said weeks ago this was going to happen. Rupert Lowe, let's be honest. I think we all know that the police charges against Lowe are not going to go anywhere.
No.
Right, everybody knows that. It's all part of the internal reform.
Well, I mean, there aren't really any charges to talk about.
It is quite clearly not a matter for the police.
No, but the disappointing thing, because obviously a lot of Reform voters listen to this show, they watch it. I was very surprised at the way that they turned on Nigel Farage yesterday. A lot of them saying they think he should resign.
No, but I think. But this is another point. I mean, firstly, just on Rupert Lowe. I mean, I said this weeks ago. It's absolutely correct that Rupert Lowe had his head turned by the Musk endorsement, and ever since then, he's basically been if you like over promoting himself.
Yeah.
As we know,
Billy Big Balls, shall we say?
Exactly. And as we know, look, the reality is, reform is basically one man. It's Nigel Farage. Now, you said, people have been ringing in saying Nigel Farage should stand down.
Yeah.
I would guess they are especially sort of politically interested and active people. Out in the country, I would be amazed if more than 10% of the country even know who Rupert Lowe is.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
But they know who Nigel Farage is.
Yeah.
So reform can have this spat and this so-called civil war as much as they like, but at the end of the day, there is only going to be one winner, because reform is Nigel Farage, and Nigel Farage is bigger than the party. And even let's just say, I cannot even understand, given the way that Nigel Farage now effectively controls reform. But let's say, for the sake of argument, there was some sort of internal coup against Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage would just walk off and set up Reform 2 or something,
right?
And then
I was talking to some people about this yesterday, though, Dan, and there's people are retreading all the various people that have fallen out with Nigel Farage and disappeared, all the way back to Robert Kilroy Silks, Suzanne Evans, and several others in between, up to Ben Habib. And this feels a bit different, though, this time, it seems to me, because people who genuinely did believe in Nigel Farage actually were the ones who wanted him to succeed, and who now think that he's somehow betrayed the cause because he's trying to do more mainstream things and less what might be described as right-wing things.
Exactly, but I mean, this is the point. We're now getting to the point where people are saying Nigel Farage has gone too woke.
Yeah,
he's betraying people. Now, you know Nigel, and I know Nigel.
Yeah, he hasn't gone woke.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. So then you have to ask the question, precisely how far to the right, how extreme do people want his policies to be? Now, I'm no great reform supporter, but you have to face facts. He had a major breakthrough at the general election. Reform had a major breakthrough at the general election. They're leading, and consistently leading, in a number of national opinion polls. They've got Labour and the Tories absolutely freaking out.
Which is why none of this makes any sense.
And that success is primarily, if not exclusively, down to Nigel Farage. The people, it seems to me, the people who seem to be attacking him are people who want him to adopt ridiculously extreme positions that would simply toxify reform in the eyes of the people they have.
Well,
to
you
try
know what the big argument is about, basically, in the end. It's about Tommy Robinson. Yeah,
it's all about Tommy Robinson. Now, the point is, if people want Nigel Farage or any mainstream political party in Britain, or any party that aspires to be mainstream, to lash themselves to Tommy Robinson, then frankly they are losing their marbles. Nigel Farage shouldn't, and no one should be going anywhere near that guy. He's currently sitting in a jail cell.
Right.
And the idea
but Rupert Lowe, of course, has argued on his behalf and has argued that he's being held.
Lowe's argued on his behalf. Remember what the original schism with Elon Musk was, because Nigel Farage actually had the guts to turn around and say to Musk at a time when Musk was claiming he was going to bankroll the party. Nigel Farage actually had the guts to turn around and say, look, this guy isn't who you think he is, and I'm not going to be associated with him, and you shouldn't be either, and this is why. As I said, Farage did the right thing. Rupert Lowe, who basically now quite clearly regards Musk as his mate, decided to play at the gallery. And frankly, Rupert Lowe's got burnt in this process, and he's going to get burnt in this process because, as I say, at the end of the day, nobody in the country, frankly, knows who he is or cares who he is.
Well,
it's not
I would say that
you might be person who resonates with the British people.
You might be half right, but you're not 100% right, because there is a big reason why a lot of people are siding with Rupert Lowe on this, and an awful lot of them are siding with Rupert Lowe because they don't think Reform is the party that they assumed that it would become when it got into Parliament, and they think that it's been sort of slightly planed down. They think that it's been modified. They think that it's been for the sake of more success in the middle. They've lost some of their edge, and I think there's some truth to that. But what they also don't like is the fact that, you know, people are being reported to the police. There's like HR inquiries going on. They've all gone very quiet. It's very unreform-like behaviour, if you know what I mean.
Well, I mean, look, we see this we see these sort of shenanigans go on in every political party.
Yeah, but this is a different political party. That's what they bought themselves into. That's what they thought they were buying themselves into. You might say that they should have known better, but they didn't.
Well, yeah, they should have known better, and this is now a party with parliamentary representation, and the game is the game. But the reality is, I mean, we'll have to see again. Wait and see.
Wait and see. No,
you're lying. But we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next few weeks, and obviously, crucially, what happens in the local elections. Now, you're saying there's this big backlash against Nigel Farage. I know there's a backlash on Elon Musk's platform. There's a big backlash on social media.
I'm not saying it's not everybody, but it's a sizable chunk, I would say.
Well, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. I mean, I'm looking at the opinion polls. I mean, this has been rumbling around now. I mean, the handbags have been going on for a while, and it obviously really blew up last week.
Right.
I'm looking at the opinion polls at the moment. You know, Reform stalled a little bit, but Reform basically stalled because of Farage's association with Trump and the Trump-Putin issue. Let's see. I'm not looking at opinion polls that show the British people saying, "Oh, it's an absolute disgrace. Nigel Farage has been an absolute disgrace to Rupert Lowe. I'm pulling my support." But let's see.
There are certainly people leaving the party who have previously paid to be in it. So I mean that is happening, albeit
I'm sure there are,
not by massive numbers. But we'll see. As I said, I mean the thing is that Rupert Lowe probably is now no longer going to be a Reform MP. So they're only going to have 4 MPs instead of 5. And if he stays in his job, he will remain, I would imagine, unless he goes to the Tories, as an independent.
Yeah,
I don't think they're ever going to sort this out in an amicable way where he goes back into Reform.
I can't see how they can, and to be perfectly honest, even if they did, it would all blow up again.
Yeah.
But the point is, if Rupert Lowe wants to sit there on his own, and wants to go off and try and set up his own party with his money, he's obviously a very rich man, with his money, with Elon Musk's money, fine. But I just don't think it's going to cut any ice with the British people, because the reality is there are limits to how extreme you can be if you want to be a mainstream political.
But the question is, if we know who the likely sort of Reform voters of the future are, and I'm not sure we do know that, but certainly there's a lot of young people out there who support them, whether or not it's former Labour voters, whether or not it's floating voters, you know, none of those things are known at the moment. And it may well be that Nigel Farage is doing the right thing to be more centre ground than he was before. But, I mean, it's difficult to see how that plays out in local elections, and we won't really know how it plays out unless Maybe the big test will be the by-election up in Runcorn.
We've got the by-election, although obviously that is still a reach. You know, that is still a.
Yeah, but if Reform won that, you'd know that.
But but obviously if Reform won it, but I mean, I think even if they didn't win it, you know, it doesn't mean the game's over. The key is, for me, what happens in the local elections. That is the key political test, because these are obviously in by-elections there are various factors that float around. These are going to be the first national elections since the local elections and Reform made their breakthrough. Now, I expect Reform to do very, very well. But one thing is absolutely certain: if Reform does want to take the next step, if it does want to do, you know, all the stuff we're talking about, if it wants to get anywhere close to 25-30% in a national election, in particular a general election, wants 150, 200 seats, whatever. I mean, that is a huge ask anyway. Two things are absolutely certain. It's not going to happen if Reform's tearing itself apart. And the other thing, crucially, it's not going to happen if Reform goes parading up and down the country saying Tommy Robinson's our new mate.
No, of course.
Right. That is the reality. So all these people who are like having a go at Nigel Farage and saying, oh, you know, he's selling out. He's not being tough enough on the Muslims. You know, he's not being tough enough saying he's going to deport people. He's not being tough enough he's not being tough enough by embracing Tommy Robinson. That is not how you are going to take the next step as a political party. So if you want to do it, you want to go down that route, you want to go down that political cul-de-sac, you want to do that, fine. But I'm telling you,
well, that's what
there is going to be one result. And I'm telling you, that's what the Labour and the Tories want Reform to do.
Yes, and that's why they're not doing it, obviously. Final question for you. I'm not sure whether you, as a football fan, will appreciate the irony here, but what on earth is Keir Starmer thinking, bankrolling Manchester United Football Club and helping them to build a stadium? I don't think the taxpayers are very interested in paying for that.
Like I said, I said it yesterday, if Man United want to play in that sort of clown-like circus tent, fine, and that's entirely appropriate as far as I'm concerned. But if a single penny of public money goes towards this, you know, ridiculous sort of vanity project, then it would be an absolute disgrace. You know, we've had the spectacle of Man United saying we got to take free meals off the you know, the cleaners.
Yeah.
At Old Trafford.
Oh, I know, it's shocking.
Here we are. We're gonna come up with this £2 billion new stadium, you know, and all this stuff. Oh, it's going to be it's going to be a temple to the north. Where did they announce this white elephant?
Yeah,
they announced Battersea.
I mean, you could understand it if they were building it down in Surrey, couldn't you? I mean, that's really where the fans are. Hey?
I mean, you know, look at it. It's on screen now. Look at that thing.
I know.
I mean, that's like the Eiffel Tower of the North. I mean, it's not. It's the Billy Smart circus of
the awful Tower of the North.
Absolutely.
That would be better. But there we are. Anyway, listen, good to see you, Dan. Wait and see. We'll talk next week and see how things are going. But we'll almost certainly reach an agreement sometime soon. Dan Hodges from Mail on Sunday. Let's get a voice note from Chris on Reform.
Morning, Mike. Hope you're well. Been following you since the days of Porky Parry. Anyway, I've tried to cancel my Reform membership to no avail. They're making it nigh on impossible. Anyway, great show.
Interesting.
Loving it. Keep up the good work.
Chris, that's very interesting. You see, I mean, there are reports that numbers of members have started to go down, and they've got a ticker, haven't they, on their front sort of page on their website, so we'll keep an eye on that. But maybe more people would like to cancel their Reform membership, and it's just not showing up. We shall see. 0344 499 1000. This from Ray in Huntington. Nigel Farage cannot and is not the whole of Reform. Dan Hodges is wrong. If Nigel is Reform, then what would happen if he walked away or, God forbid, died? Would that be the end of Reform? No one person is bigger than the party. I mean, I'm tempted to agree with that, Ray, but I mean, Nigel Farage isn't just any old politician. He is an incredibly charismatic and powerful politician, and he has built up political parties almost single-handedly on his own before. He did it with the Brexit Party. Steve says this morning, Mike, Reform have got to bury the hatchet. I've been married 50 years and we still argue. Anyone who says they never argue in their relationships are liars. I'm sticking with Reform. No way should Rupert join the Tories. He would only be one person in 100 others and not carry any weight. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people still got plenty to say about this. Julie says this: thanks for a great show. About the reform situation, I would like to know why the people who are leaving reform before the situation is sorted. This is one little problem in the greater scheme of things, but these self-same people kept supporting either the Tories or Labour when these two parties have had far bigger problems or scandals. Why are they now so quick to throw the towel in with reform? It makes no sense to me. Well, I mean, it's interesting. I don't see them having a sort of rapprochement of any kind, though. I don't really see that something this toxic gets fixed. I don't see Rupert Lowe going back in. But it may well be that they meet each other today, because obviously they sit on the same part of the benches inside the House of Commons. And Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage, if they're both going to be at Prime Minister's questions, are almost bound to be sitting next to each other, aren't they? So we'll have to keep an eye on that. That'll be during Julia's show. 9:27.
Hi, Ian. Yes, I mean, it's another week and another woman is being harassed and called a bigot online for believing in the biological reality of sex. And it's such a shame because clearly in that video, Natalie is being extremely reasonable. And like you said, it's a bit ridiculous that she's having to justify herself. But this is the climate that we now live in. Women have to justify why it is that they want to exclude males, which she has every right to do so under the Equality Act. As you say, Natalie originally said in 2021 when she launched her project,
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:31. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. Lorraine says this: for the first time, I have to agree with Dan Hodges' take on reform. I consider myself a middle-aged woman with measured views. As a reform voter, if they did consider supporting Tommy Robinson, I would immediately leave, as would many others, I believe. Debbie says Dan Hodges talking sense on reform. Maybe Talk has to wait for the end of the process before criticising. Rupert Lowe is lovely, but he's not a leader. Well, you know, Rupert Lowe is being very critical of reform, and we're reporting what he's saying. So that's what's going on. Nobody's saying the Reform Party is over and done with. Nobody's saying they've reached the end of their road. But what I am saying is I don't think that Rupert Lowe will be back as an MP for reform anytime soon, or ever. That's what I think. It's 9:32. Let's talk to Alex. Oh, no, let's get a voice note from Glenn first.
Hi, Mike. It's Glenn from Suffolk here. I actually agree with Dan Hodges for once. Reform cannot align themselves with Tommy Robinson, whether you agree with certain things that he's done and said. They just can't. But the one thing that this does show is that the people are very hooked on immigration, and quite rightly so, and it needs to get sorted. Farage is showing a bit of weakness when it comes to that, and I think this massive outpouring of love, whatever you call it, for Rupert Lowe, that is telling Farage that he's got to be hard and fast on immigration, both legal and illegal. Have a good day.
Glenn, thanks very much indeed for that voice note. If you want to be involved in all of that, you know what to do. 0344 499 1000 on WhatsApp, and you can send us one which will play out as well. Alex Crooks here, TalkSport's chief football correspondent. He's down in Cheltenham at the moment, where we had reports earlier on, Alex, very good morning to you, there's been snowing.
Yeah, good morning. I've got to say I was a little bit shocked when I stepped out of the hotel this morning and saw the white stuff all over the floor in the car park. It has stopped now. I think it's going to clear up by about 11 o'clock, but I've made the fatal error of not bringing a coat. So,
oh, no.
Yeah, not going outside much.
You'll have to go and buy one then, won't you? I mean, I'm sure that the TalkSport bosses will wear the expense.
Yeah, I'll get that claim for her, I'm sure.
No problem at all. A couple of things to talk about first. In Cheltenham yesterday, quite a day. A lot of the papers reported this morning that the bookies had a massive sort of let-off because the two favourites that were going to be emptying their bank accounts basically fell in the same race, right?
They did. So I'm in the MGM box. Actually, I'm going to be broadcasting from here with Jim White and Troy Deeney, 10 till 1. I've got to say, all the BetMGM guys have turned up, massive smiles on their faces, because you're right, not only Constitution Hill obviously fell, Margeborough as well. Had those two won, and obviously the other two favourites did, it would have been a very costly day for the bookies. As it was a profitable one. Today, they're worried about Ballyburn and John Bond, the two hot pots coming up in a double. And I'd chuck out Be Aware as well, a Dan Skelton horse. I know the yard really keen on that one. So maybe this could be the day the punters get a bit of revenge.
Yeah, it could well be. And I mean, I don't know what this... I mean, it will be frozen ground then, I suppose. That could be interesting as well, right?
Yeah, I think certainly the going's going to be a bit softer today. I know the organisers here got a little bit of stick for watering the track last week and maybe making it a bit softer than it should be. But they always try and get good to soft ground. They achieved it yesterday, so let's see what the going's going to be like today.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I mean, it's always a massive event, isn't it, Cheltenham? It's always huge for TalkSport. It's huge for The Sun. They've got a 16-page pull-out on their front page today as well. What sort of attendance are you seeing? Is it as big as ever?
It was a little bit down yesterday. I think 55,000 for the first day. For me, the best day of the meeting, the Tuesday, it was 60,000 this time last year. But I guess that's a reflection on maybe the fact there's not as much money swilling around as previously. They're still expecting more than 200,000 punters to come through the doors this week. And for me, it's still one of the best weeks in the sporting calendar.
Yeah, one of my favourite pictures of the weekend was a load of horses on a private jet being flown over from Dublin. Which I don't think I'd ever seen anything like before. The other big story, of course, is Man United. We've been talking about it this morning because, for some bizarre reason, the government seems to think that Man United Stadium should be paid for by the taxpayers. But a lot of people making fun of what it looks like. Clownland, some people are calling it. Gold Trafford, one of the papers has got. 2 billion quid. It's quite a story.
Yeah, maybe it's fitting the way that Manchester United have been run over the past couple of decades. That the new stadium looks a little bit like a circus tent. My wife, actually, she's from Bognor Regis, and of course they've got a Butlins there, and she did say when the design came out yesterday with the three giant masts that apparently are going to be visible from the Peak District, looks like the big top at Butlins. So obviously there's always going to be a little bit of criticism. I'm torn. I'm a Manchester United fan. I'm a traditionalist. I love Old Trafford, but I understand financially why maybe it makes sense to build a new stadium. But I hope they can do what Tottenham have done and manage to keep that nod to the past, manage to create such a brilliant atmosphere. I think that's the idea of the giant tent, which is solar powered, to try and generate as much noise as possible. How it's going to be paid for, I think, is still open to interpretation. We were being told yesterday by Omar Barada, the chief executive of Manchester United, it wouldn't be funded by the taxpayer. But there is an irony, isn't there? 24 hours after Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the minority owner, says the club might run out of money by the end of the year, then they announced they're going to build a new £2 billion stadium literally the next day.
Yeah, it is. So much money involved in it all. Alex, have a great day down there. Thanks very much indeed. Alex Cook, TalkSport's chief football correspondent, reporting into us there from a very frozen Cheltenham, which is warming up a bit, but where they had some snow, believe it or not, a little bit earlier on. And somebody sent us a note, actually, to say they remember when it was snowing a few years back. We'll come back to that in a moment. I will stay the course of reform, says Lynn from Staines. I'm not a fair weather friend. This is their first hiccup, and hopefully most sensible people will realise this. And Matt says the reason people are leaving reform is that this should have been kept under wraps until the investigation had concluded. Airing it out to everyone before this makes them exactly the same as the other two parties. And Nigella says this: Mike, thank you for your measured views on reform. I do tend to agree with Dan Hodges, even if I like some of the things that Rupert Lowe was saying. That might not necessarily win the next general election, and it might alienate a lot of voters. Nigel is doing the right thing. His aim is to win the next election. We can't mess around now. We're doing so well. Well, this is the thing. So many people who are reform voters and reform supporters are kind of dismayed to see the party kind of tearing itself apart when they don't really need to do that. And that is part of the problem. One here from Leslie. Mike, when you worked in the press room and had a spat with someone who then called the police and called in a KC, could you still work with them? I think not, would be the straight answer to that. But the other thing about reform is that it's a very small and tight-knit group of people. There's only 5 MPs. You know, if I was working in a newspaper office with, say, 100 people, you could easily find ways of working with one person who you'd had a row with. But not if there's only 5 of you sitting in the same room all the time. And according to Rupert Lowe, sometimes not sitting in the same room and not even being told about things that were going on. So that seems to be the problem. It's 9:38. This is Morning Glory.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, and this, of course, is the home of common sense. It's the place to get a sticker that says it's the home of common sense, and there it is. You can get one of these by sending your name and address to this particular address. It's talk.tv/sticker, and that's the only place you can get them. It's the only place that if you've asked for them in any other form before, you know, just remember to do it here. This is talk.tv/sticker, and we will get them out to you. There's a massive demand for them. We sent out another batch yesterday. There'll be more going out in the coming days as well. Incredibly popular move, this. I mean, absolutely extraordinary. So thank you very much to everyone who's not only taken them, but also has displayed them on the back of their vehicle as well. And now, a little bit of a breaking news story here. The Royal Navy apparently is planning to trial Elon Musk's internet network Starlink on the fleet's flagship aircraft carrier, according to reports. Now, this is quite a manoeuvre, isn't it? The network's going to be rolled out across the fleet if tests are successful, despite warnings that it could be weaponised. I'm not sure I'd like the sound of that. So I presume that they've got it, obviously, nailed down that the HMS Prince of Wales will be able to use the high-speed network to watch television, contact loved ones during 9-month deployment in the Indo-Pacific this spring. If the trial is deemed successful, Starlink can be rolled out across the rest of the fleet. That's going to be worth a few quid to Elon Musk, isn't it? Unbelievable. 7,000 satellites it uses via a constellation in low Earth orbit, and is relied upon by Ukrainian forces to coordinate artillery strikes and provide encrypted communication between commanders and troops. Quite a world that Elon Musk has created, isn't it? Let's talk now, though, to Debbie Matthews, the voice for lost pets, because believe it or not, this is a story. Estimated 1,808 dogs are stolen across the UK just last year alone, which is a very large number. Let's find out what's going on. Debbie, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for doing this.
No, not at all. It's one of the things that any dog owner really dreads, isn't it? You know, I mean, I'll sometimes get in the back of the car and you know, having put the dog in the back of the car, I wonder if he's there, just check again, make sure somebody hasn't sort of opened the back and taken him out. It's a kind of a constant worry. It's like having children, isn't it? But so many of these dogs get stolen. Do they get returned or do they just disappear?
It's a very small number that get returned. According to the figures from Direct Line over the last 10 years, there's still 19,000 stolen dogs missing out there, which is a huge amount. And 5 dogs a day being stolen is awful. 1 dog a day is awful. Families never get over it. They constantly look and search. You know, they're our best friends. We feed them. They're our babies. Basically. You know, they're members of the family.
And do you know how they get stolen mostly? I mean, do they get stolen just, is it a sort of random thing? Is it a planned thing? How does it work?
There are a lot of opportune thieves, but the number one place for dogs being stolen is the home and garden. So check your home security, your garden, gates, locks, lights, all those things. If you go for a walk, keep your dog in eyesight. You know, we've heard of dogs going through bushes and someone's the other side and grabs your dog, and that's it. Cars, obviously never leave your dog alone in a car, and never tie dog outside a shop.
And do they use these dogs? I mean, I know I've heard stories in the past where dogs are sometimes stolen and then used for fighting. They're not stolen to be given to anybody. Sometimes they're stolen and then sold on to somebody else. Yeah,
the first... We saw a lot of it during COVID, where a lot of dogs were stolen for breeding. Right. So, you know, they'll take a dog. They don't care what size, colour, sex it is. They just take the dogs, then decide what they're going to do with them. Some will go into breeding. Many will be sold on to the public who are totally oblivious that they've bought a stolen dog. And, of course, we've got the dog fighting aspect there, which is horrendous to think of. But also people hold on to dogs until they see rewards. Some people will get ransom demands. So it's a good business for a dog thief.
Yeah, right. And so presumably there are things that you're going to suggest that people do with their dog in terms of making it more secure or less likely to be stolen. Obviously, chipping the dog is presumably helpful, but what else can they do?
Well, chipping is good, but we don't have a good microchipping system in the UK. So if you walk into a vet's with my dog, if the vet doesn't check the microchip registration, I'm not going to get my dog. And that's where we are at the moment. And I've been campaigning on that since 2006. It's ridiculous that microchips aren't checked.
So they don't bother looking at them at all?
No, they'll scan them, they'll put the number on their files, but they don't check the registration. And we've also got an unregulated database that is in the UK. And if your dog is on that, it will show up as unregistered, which is another big problem. So vets could actually help with that as well. Right. But, you know, don't leave your dog outside a shop. Keep your dog on, you know, an eye on your dog in the garden. And if your dog does go missing, you contact the police, obviously, on 101. The dog warden, you report to your local animal warden. The microchip database to flag as missing, register on dog lost. And social media and poster is still very, very useful skill for people. A
lot of people talk about trackers now as well. I've seen quite a few adverts for things, and I presume it's a sort of something that goes on the dog's lead or the collar or something like that. But it's like a sort of GPS tracker. Is that any good?
They're good, but if your dog is stolen, that's going to be discarded straight away, so it's not really going to help a stolen dog. But if your dog's bad hearing, bad sight, then I can see the value in it.
Yeah, because I mean, it's one of those. As I say, it's one of those awful situations. If you suddenly the dog runs off and you don't know where it is, it's happened to friends of mine, and they've had to go looking for the dog in the woods or something for for an hour or two before they can come back.
There's now wonderful services. The drones go up, and they've got heat sensors. Drone SAR for Lost Dogs UK are incredible. Okay. They get lots of dogs like that who have disappeared into fields, and you haven't got a clue where to start looking for them. That does really help.
Okay, great, Debbie. If anyone wants to get in touch with your organisation, how do they do that?
Well, we're the Stolen and Missing Pets Alliance. .co.uk and also doglost.co.uk. So anything you need to know, if you need help with your registration microchip, how to update your microchip registration, just let us know.
Okay, brilliant stuff. Good to talk to you, Debbie. Thank you very much indeed. Debbie Matthews, voice for Lost Pets there, talking to us about the numbers. Nearly 2,000 dogs stolen across the UK last year. Absolutely staggering, isn't it? Incredible. I've cancelled my Reform membership, says Paul in Leyland. Followed Rupert Lowe since his speech at the party conference. It was great. Don't like Nigel Farage's friendship with Donald Trump. Thank you. Alan says, why has Cheltenham Ladies' Day been changed to Style Day? Maybe it should be called People with Breasts Day. Well, I mean, far be it from me to suggest you adapting something from the St John Ambulance Brigade, but you may well have a point. Phil says this from Kent, and this is going to surprise you. Mike, he says, I think Nigel Farage is like Meghan Markle. He's great at getting himself to the top, but lacks the ability to work with others to maintain that position. I don't think he's going to like that one, is he? Meghan Markle. Nigel Farage. Goodness most gracious to me. It's 9:48. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here soon. This is Talk.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the home of common sense. It is, of course, the only place you get common sense in this day and age, because there's an awful lot of it lacking in certain places around the country and around the world. You can also show that you're a member of the revolution of common sense by getting one of these rather tasty little bumper stickers. And in order to get one, you've got to talk to us. You've got to send us your name and your address to talk.tv/sticker, and you can stick one of these on the back of your car, on the bumper, if you like, or on the window, even if you want to. The common sense revolution is underway. And you want to be part of it. You just don't want to miss it. Absolutely right. Ed from Thurrock says, the voice note about the man who had 2 months community service after identifying as everything, he should have said he was a vegan as well. Then he would have had to walk out for free. Oh well, we live and learn. And Vern from Southampton, I remember the Cheltenham Festival in 1987 had really bad snow. Really? Did it? Yeah, it was snowing today. Very cold out there. Let's have a voice note. And actually, no, let's not get a voice note. Let's do Nigel Farage. He was on Sky News Australia last night being asked about Rupert Lowe. Here's what he had to say.
Well, look, you know, he has done some good work as an MP, lots of written questions, a big Twitter X following, but I've been here before. You know, you build something up and somebody else thinks they can do a better job than you. So I think it's no secret he'd like to be leader. He thinks he's going to be the next Prime Minister. He even said to a group of us the other week, I will destroy anyone that gets in my way. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm in the way. And to have said what he said just 2 weeks before nominations go in for the English County Council local elections, to attempt to spread demoralisation amongst our thousands of volunteers who are out there getting ready, really is a very, very bad thing to do.
That's Nigel Farage there talking about the situation, as it were, on Sky News Australia. We've asked both Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe to come in and talk to us, so we'll see whether we manage to get them before the end of the week. Right now, though, Melissa is here from Cambridge. Melissa, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. What can you tell us about the Cambridge railway station?
Yeah. So South Cambridgeshire train station is off Francis Crick Avenue,
right,
which is next to the biomedical campus in South Cambridgeshire, which is on top of Adam Brooks and Papworth as well. The problem I have is, or what I'm concerned about, is because there's only 1,000 bicycle spaces, no car park.
Right.
I'm worried they're all going to start using the hospital car park, because there's nothing to stop you using it. Obviously, you don't have to produce or anything like that.
Is it not a pay car park, the hospital car park?
Well, yes, it is, but it'll be. I bet you a tenner they'll go and park in there. They'll use all, or they'll just use all the local around here.
Right.
Everybody's driveways, or
what are the roads? What are the roads like around the station? Are they quite small?
Crazy. The roads are mental. I mean, what should be a 5-minute journey for me to Adam Brooks takes me 20 minutes.
Right. I was in Cambridge a couple of years ago for a wedding, and the traffic is pretty awful, isn't it?
It's awful. It's really bad. I mean, there's so many cycle lanes. It's unreal. And that roundabout is unreal. Can't tell you. There's too many colours on it. It's just too confusing.
Right. It's mad. And Cambridge is one of the world's sort of centres of bike riding, isn't it? People tell me that bike riding in Cambridge is now massive.
Worse than Holland.
Oh, God. Crikey. At least in Holland you can dull the pain a bit with some of their, legal substances.
They don't like me. I come along in my big Range Rover, so
Excellent
they don't
job.
like me very much.
Well done, you. Excellent. Well, keep up the good work, Melissa. Thanks for letting us know. This is craziness, isn't it? We heard this morning, Theo Oswald was here. We were talking about this new tunnel, the Silvertown Tunnel, that's going under the River Thames, right next to the Blackwall Tunnel, going from sort of southeast London over towards the Greenwich area, basically. And it's almost exactly identical in terms of where it's going to be. But basically, there's going to be 2 lanes each way, but one of those lanes is going to be a bus lane, which presumably can be used by cyclists as well. Unbelievable. Charlotte in Stoke says this, Mike, I'm a working mum. We pay an exorbitant amount in tax, and I'm currently working with a broken joint because of NHS waiting lists. So to see the smirking faces of those migrant men illegally infesting our shores, knowing full well they'll be draining the NHS, makes me burn with rage. But I do love your show. Yeah, I know. I can absolutely feel your pain. People do. people just get so fed up with all of it, and they just need to be given some form of an idea that the government's actually doing something good for you. Stuart says this: I've got a friend who lives in South London. He goes to work on his bicycle, the train, and uses only stations with no guards or barriers and never pays anything. Well, I was reading a piece just at the weekend, I think, about how, the number of people who now just don't bother paying their fare on the underground, and they just ram themselves through tailgating, if you like, if you want to call it that, especially a lot of young kids who just basically don't bother paying and never paid to travel on the underground. And they wonder why they haven't got any money. Absolutely ridiculous. Got a bit more breaking news for you. God, it's happening all over the place today. Former Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon will not seek re-election to Holyrood next year. Well, that's a relief. For everyone, I think. John is in Dorset. Hello, John.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, sir. What can I do for you?
Yeah, as a long-term, a Reform member of the last 3 years, having been a Conservative for 54 years,
yes,
I have to say that Reform is our only political home as an alternative to Green, Labour and the Conservatives, all who seemed resolutely left.
Yes.
And it's a pity when the family fall out, because you've got two big beasts with egos. They're both Marmite.
Yeah.
But I would quote Dan Hodgson, Reform is Nigel Farage. And if you don't like Nigel, well, you'll have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine anybody with a political acuity who's going to be able to form a centre-right party.
No, I agree. I think that's right. I don't see Rupert Lowe returning to the fold at all, really. I just don't think it's going to happen. But we should watch it with interest. John, thank you very much indeed. Snow, again, just outside of Cheltenham. We've got a picture coming in now. Snowing in Cheltenham. Goodness gracious me. Julie Hartley-Brewer's here. Very good morning.
Very good morning.
Well,
you need to get your fur out, your hat.
Yeah, I know. Well, I had the wrong coat yesterday. It was really cold. I was down in Westminster walking around, and it was freezing.
I know, it's called weather.
Yeah.
We have this changeable weather. That's why we talk about it a lot.
We do. I mean, people say, why are you all talking about the weather? Because it's always not doing what it's meant
exactly.
to.
Well, there's countries where it's just, this is the weather in April, this is the weather, you know exactly what it is, whereas we get 4 seasons in a day.
We do.
It's the joy of living where we live.
It is. This is why I was saying earlier, I don't fancy Angela Rayner's plan to build more houses out of wood, because I'm afraid in this country, wood rots.
Don't you always think that when you see this footage of sort of tornadoes ripping through little bit towns in America, you think, have you thought of building these things out of anything other than balsa?
Well, no, the thing is that they wipe away the